And we're live. Look at that, everybody. It's time for an A-plus study group. This is our pre-show. We're just getting set up here. In about 9 minutes, we'll get started with our 220-1001 Core 1 A-plus study group. Lots of wires that have to be untangled here just to do a single live stream. But I think we've managed it. We've finally got it done. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. We've got you popped out there. Let's see. We've got... recordings are going. You can see our Cylons down here going. We've got video looks good. We've got chat is up. I think we're ready. Hello, everyone. Hello, Malcolm from St. Vincent. Good to see you again. Thanks for being here. Hello, Austin, Texas. Saul is asking, how long should you prepare for these exams? I would say each exam on average somewhere around 2 to 3 months, but yours could obviously be more or less depending. So you have to put that in the equation to figure out which one of these you're planning to take. Hello, Baltimore and Sweden and Myanmar and Bradenton, Florida. There's Florida folks checking in. Good to see you. Hello, Mexico. Sounds so sweet. Hey, New York City. New York City. Atlanta, Georgia's here. Thanks for being here, everybody. We've got a lot of questions. They're all brand new, of course. Every study group is all brand new questions. I'm not so sure about my shirt. My shirt, I'll have to see if this works out. We're trying to get situated here. I don't know. Okay, I think we're in good shape. There's a lot of moving parts here that have nothing to do with A+. It's just a lot of buttons that need to be pushed, which is really, that is my wheelhouse. Pushing buttons, I'm absolutely there. Hello, South Africa. There's more New York. There's Ohio. We got lots of folks checking in. We've got all QA. I'm going to ask you questions, all 1001 Core 1 QA in this first hour. And then the second hour, I'll open up the chat room and we'll take questions. So whatever questions you have, make a note. Make sure you have them available in that second hour. We'll be able to do that. Hey, Jacksonville, Central Texas, Miami, Los Angeles is here. Folks from all over checking in. Thanks for being here. Uganda's checking in. Downtown Houston. Oh, lots of this. Michael says, pass the Network Plus on my first try. Congratulations, Michael. That's a good one to have in your pocket, too. I think everything sort of revolves around the network. Everything touches the network, therefore the networking certifications are just so important. Hello, Austin and Fort Worth and South Dakota and Kentucky and West Midlands, UK. Hey, Philly, New Orleans, or Nolans, or whatever it is. They've got, I haven't been to New Orleans in a while. It's within driving distance of the studios. So I really need to work on that. We're already getting super chats. We haven't even technically gotten started, but Tristan coming in early with the $9.99 super chat. Thank you. Tristan says, I passed both Core 1 and Core 2 on my first try. Thanks to this study group and your amazing videos. Thank you, Professor. Good luck, everyone. You can do it, too. That's absolutely true. It's not just me saying you can do it. We have Tristan saying you can do it. This is a well-honed machine at this point. We've put together every resource you could possibly need to pass these exams. So it's great to hear these stories when people pass. It's just, that makes my day. That is the motivation I need. I don't need motivation to get up in the morning, but it's nice to know that what you're doing is making a difference. It takes months to create a single course. So it's very nice when someone says, yeah, that was worth the time. So thank you. Hello, Oakland and Solomon Islands and Minneapolis and Maryland and Kendall, down on Kendall Drive. Right off, well, it depends. You could be on the 826 side. You could be over on the Turnpike side. We'll have to find out. South Africa is here. New Mexico. Thanks for being here. Lots of folks checking in. This is fantastic. But Tristan, thank you also for the super chat. Completely unnecessary and absolutely appreciated. I don't know if those two make any sense going together, but yes, that works out pretty well. And congratulations on your A+, or your Network Plus, was it? It was the A+, it was the Core 1 and Core 2. The great part about this is now you've got a jumping off point. Now you can just keep leveling up. I just love IT for that. We got 4 minutes to go. 4 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. We'll get things going here. Get the entire thing. This is not the live stream. Well, I mean, it is the live stream, but normally you see me like this. So you'll see me like this for a while. See the back, but the back of my head, this is not the normal camera we use for the live stream. You can kind of see me there. Look, there he is right there. Lots going on. Lots going on. A video about chipsets. What kind of chipsets? And why would I want to do a video about chipsets? Is really the question. Why would I want to do that? There's not much to chipsets unless there's a specific chipset, and then you're in the weeds. You're way too deep for A+ anyway. Maybe there is a certification out there that talks about chipsets. And the older A+s did. But, you know, if they're not in the exam objectives now, then they don't get into the latest videos. So there was, back in the day, there was a chipsets video where we talked about the North Bridge, the South Bridge, the memory transfers between all of these and the CPU. But these days we don't have a North Bridge. We don't have a South Bridge. That architecture's kind of played out. We've evolved past it. So it's a different architecture today, many similarities, but sort of collapsed. So there's no chipset conversation. We don't talk about North Bridge and South Bridge anymore because you're not going to see it on a modern system. It's like talking about an CySA bus. You know, you're just not going to see that. The entire architecture has been compressed, minimized, simplified, faster, all of that. 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes. 2 minutes to go. It's been a couple weeks since I did a live stream. I always do a bunch at the beginning of the month, and then sometimes there is 1 week after at the end of the month where we don't have one. This past month we had 2 weeks because I sort of skipped a week here at the beginning of the month. And now you have to sit down and do another live stream and think, how does this work again? Where are the buttons? What's this button do? It's like you're starting over again. It's not like riding a bicycle. It's complete forgetfulness that now you have to reintegrate yourself. Now, fortunately, during this time when you have not been seeing me live, I've been producing videos. So the entire studio has just been in constant use. So there's not much to remember at this point other than how do I turn the stream on? The little important things. And hey, we managed to do it. How about that, huh? It's good when I have a box down here. This is this tiny little box. You can kind of see the video, the LCD video that's on the front of it. That is the box that does the streaming. And this is the results. That's what the video is from that box doing the streaming. So you can see on there, it's the Blackmagic Design streamer. What is the difference between the old and the new exam? We can talk about that in the after show. I can go into detail for you. The quick answer, the spoiler alert, is not much. There's not much difference. There's about 40% of the content is new. So there are new content, but the structure is almost identical to the old. So if you're familiar with the old, you'll see the structure and think, oh, this is very familiar, but all of the content is updated. That's pretty much what it is, which is what you would expect from a certification exam. I think it's top of the hour, pretty much. Have we hit it yet? I think we have. It's time to do a live stream. Let's see if we can figure this out. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2022 Professor Messer 220-1001 or Core 1 A+ study group. This is the study group we do every month where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And then if you're here live, you can answer them live. If you're watching the replay, you can follow along. And hopefully you'll learn a few things about the style and topics that you might find on the actual A+ exam. It's a fun time in this first hour. Well, I'll ask you the questions from the exam. In the second hour, I open up the chat room and we'll take questions, anything you'd like to talk about. We've already had a few pop through. A few folks have already been asking questions and wondering about certain topics, so we will certainly address those in the after show, which is now just turned into sort of an extension of the show. But that's our second hour. So stick around for that. We'll be glad to take your questions then as well. Well, if you are here live, you can participate live. You can answer these questions live on the internets. The way you would do that is to open up a new tab in your browser. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. There's a question waiting for you if you do that. Some folks like to have an app for this, a mobile app. Everybody should have a mobile app. Why wouldn't you? If you'd like to use a mobile app, Socrative Student App is the name of the app, the Socrative Student App. If you use the app, it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. That is the room name. If you put all of those things in properly, you've typed it all in, you've got a new browser window up, you've got the app running, there will be a question waiting for you. That's from last month, so it may look familiar to you if you were here last month or you watched the replay. That is our rewind question, and that rewind question asks, a single drive in a RAID 0 array has failed. Which of the following would be the best next step? Do we replace the bad drive and resync? Do we replace all drives and restore from backup? Do we replace all but one working drive? Do we replace the bad drive and restore from backup? Or do we replace all drives and resync? If you think you know the answer, the rules as we go through this today are not to answer in the chat room. You instead want to answer on this link right here, ProfessorMesser.com/QA. That will get you to the question. You'll be able to answer the question. A number of you are already locking in your answers. I can see the results are popping up there very quickly. ProfessorMesser.com/QA is the link you want to use to do that. We will come back to this question in just a moment. Thanks for being here. It's one of the great delights of my month, seriously, is to sit down in a live stream and have these great conversations and answer questions and just hang out for a couple of hours. It's one of the reasons we do a live stream for A+ Core 1, Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus. And of course, when we're not here, you can find us on YouTube. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube for all of our latest YouTube videos. A lot of new A+ videos lately, and there's more to come, so you may want to subscribe. You also want to go to ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter or /Instagram. Both of those will have a daily A+ pop quiz question, so you can always go there to find out what's going on, what type of things are happening. It's all on our website. It's all on the social media. They're easy to find. Somewhere in this first hour, I will provide you with some instructions on how you can receive 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. So keep listening in sometime during this first hour for those instructions and some very important details about how you could receive an email from me with that CEU certification. As you are probably aware, there are A+ exams. There's a lot of A+ exams right now. The one that has been around probably for the longest time, certainly that is current, is the 221,001 and 221,002. Those two exams were released on January the 15th of 2019, and CompTIA has told us that those two exams will be retired on October the 20th. So the real question becomes, are you working towards finishing up these two exams by October the 20th? You've got about 6 months, just under that at this point. So that's a lot of time. And right now, this is probably your best bet for earning your A+ certification. If you have been studying that 221,001 and 1,002, keep studying. You've got exactly the right exams. Those are the ones you should be passing. Both of these exams are 90 minutes for each of these exams. The 221,001, you need to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. And on the 1,002, you need to earn a 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. And as soon as you pass, even though the exam retires in October, as soon as you pass both exams, you are certified for 3 years. Once you're certified, it doesn't matter what they do with the exams. You've already earned your certification. So that's the good part of it. Now, if you've been watching the CompTIA website, you may have noticed that there's a new set of exams that are also available at the same time as the old exams. Talk about that in a moment. They are the 220-1101 and 220-1102 exams. Those exams were released on April the 20th of 2022. It's probably estimated, since those just came out, It's estimated that those 2 exams will retire somewhere around November of 2025, but we'll know more about that once we get 3.5 years from now. We'll probably narrow down exactly when that date might be. So far in the future, you don't have to worry about it right now. The exam requirements are exactly the same as the existing or older A-plus exams, the 1001 and 1002. And as I mentioned, this is one where you need to take the exams that will give you the best chance of earning your A-plus certification. Because these 2 exams were released in April, which is not even a month ago, there are very limited study materials available. This is relatively normal when a new version of an exam comes out. Everybody now has to produce new content. Producing that new content takes time, and because there's not a lot of options to choose from, this is ultimately a much harder exam to pass because you don't have the materials available that you do with the existing ones. That's why I tell you, go earn the certification that's currently available, the 1001 and 1002, the one that you have all of these study materials available for. Just plenty there to be able to work with. That's what I would recommend doing. And in another month or 2, we can revisit the universe of study materials to see, could we possibly shift gears and maybe change and start working towards this newer set of exams? Maybe then we will. But my recommendation right now is not to take those newer exams. I just don't think that's a great idea at all. Today, we're going to talk about the 1001 exam. That's our Core 1 exam. It deals with mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So there's a lot there we're going to go through. We will have topics from each of those during this first hour, so stick around for that. Don't forget that we have our Success Bundles available. This is the physical version of the Success Bundle with the Professor Messer USB drive, and we also get physical books that I can send you as well for course notes and practice exams and other things as well. Those are all available on my website. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/1001success. There's a lot to see there along those. We also, if you're watching this live stream, there's a replay of this video available on YouTube immediately afterwards. There is also a podcast version. It's an audio-only version. You can subscribe to that by visiting professormesser.com/podcast. That's a podcast for the A+, the Network Plus, and Security Plus. They're all there. Now, if you go to YouTube about a day after, my marketing manager, Lori, goes through and listens to this entire thing all over again. She goes through every single one and puts timestamps in the YouTube video description so that you have little chapter settings along the timeline of your YouTube player. Thanks, Lori, for doing this. Everybody say hi to Lori. She's the one watching this, I hope, at 1.5 or 2 times speed so that you don't have to sit through this at real time. It's great having all of these timestamps there because you can find exactly what you're looking for, narrow down on it, hit the button, and now you can find the question, the answer, or the after show info that you're looking for. Of course, when we're not doing this live, we are available on our chat room on Discord. You can go to professormesser.com/Discord to join us there. There is a lot that we talk about throughout the week. Sometimes it's technology related, sometimes it isn't. We have separate channels for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and other things as well. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. We also have on our website, if you're in the U.S. and Canada, some discounted vouchers. These vouchers are discounted from the price that you would normally pay on the CompTIA store. So don't pay whatever they're charging there on the CompTIA store. Simply visit professormesser.com/vouchers. Purchase your voucher for a discount. The discount's already built in. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need a discount code. You don't have to hunt around the internet. You don't need a browser plugin. You simply go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and they are already discounted. If you buy the voucher on my site, as if the discount wasn't enough, I'll give you a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook, which has a set of things that you can use to plan your studies, things that you can do during the exam to earn more points on your exam, and for some people, things you can do after the exam, especially if you need to prepare for another round of exams. They are all in my Exam Hacks ebook. That's just included free if you buy a voucher from my website at professormesser.com/vouchers. vouchers. Let's go back to that question we talked about earlier. The question asked, a single drive in a RAID 0 array has failed. Which of the following would be the best next step? Would it be to replace the bad drive and resync, replace all drives and restore from backup, replace all but one working drive, replace the bad drive and restore from backup, or replace all drives and resync? Well, recovering from RAID is a pretty important thing to know. It's certainly in the exam objectives, specifically the 5.3 section on troubleshooting hard drives. And I have a chart, of course, in my videos that talks specifically about RAID 0, where a single drive failure, it breaks the array and all of your data is lost because you've now lost, well, effectively half your data. The array is no longer functional at that point. RAID 0 is zero redundancy. So losing a drive there means that you've lost the data. As we've always mentioned, RAID is not backup. RAID has never been backup. So make sure that if you have any of these RAID types running, that you also have backups of all of the data that is on these RAID types. We go into much more detail with backups in the newer A+ series. So if you're somebody who's interested in knowing more about that, that may be something good to look at. So if we know in RAID 0 that there is no data available, there's nothing then to resync. So anything that says resync is not going to work very well because there's no data to resync. That's not going to help you. So it's not going to be A and it's not going to be E. Replace all drives and restore from backup. Why would you replace all drives? Some of the drives still work. So you would probably only replace the bad drives, right? You would not throw out the new drives. There's no reason to do that. So that would not be B. Replace all but one working drive. So if you have 10 drives in your RAID 0 array and one of them breaks, you're also going to take out 8 others, right? No, of course not. It's not like how you would do it. So you would not replace all but one working drive. You would replace the bad drive, and then you would need to restore all of this data from backup because your RAID array is not working. So that is why a backup is so important. If you lose data on this array, you can recover that data. In the case of this question where RAID 0 has failed, the correct answer is indeed D, replace the bad drive and restore from backup. 49% of you got that one absolutely right. 30% of you said to replace the bad drive and resync. This is one where the resync part is the one that would probably not work very well for us because there's nothing to sync from. Obviously, the right answer being D is the one we want to focus on. And if you're not familiar with understanding what the options are for RAID, make sure you spend some time on RAID. You may certainly get some RAID questions on your exam. It is there's a whole section of it, a whole video of it on my A+. Might be something worth thinking about. And certainly when you get out and start working with these arrays, you will find lots of RAID out in your companies, places you work. In my studio here, we have plenty of RAID that we are using, lots of drive storage, and we use RAID to make sure that we can maintain the uptime and availability if we happen to lose one of those drives, which means, of course, I am not running RAID 0. I don't know many people who do run RAID 0, but it does have its place, but it's certainly very niche in being able to do that. Well, that was our rewind question. What I'd like to do now is give you a brand new question you've never seen before. I write all of these questions new every month. And of course, the first new question of every month is a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are not multiple choice. The one we just did, where we had a question and multiple choices to choose from, that is multiple choice question. But CompTIA could ask you other types of questions. They might ask you a fill in the blank. They might put you in a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. They might put you in a Windows environment and ask you to find a particular utility or to use a utility. There could be drag and drop questions. There could be matching questions. You never know what they're going to ask. But all of the content comes from the exam objectives. So don't worry about how they're asking the question. Worry about knowing the content of what they're asking, and you'll do fine. So here is our performance-based question of the month. This is a matching question that asks, match these network protocols to their function. Not all functions will be used. So you can see I have 4 different protocols, and I have 7 different functions. If If you do the math, that means that 3 will be left over at the end. So let's step through all 4 of these different network protocols. We have LDAP, IMAP, SSH, and AFP. And then we have 7 different functions. They are view the console of a remote Linux server, print to a shared Windows printer, move important emails to their own folder, query statistics from an internet firewall, encrypt all communication in a browser, validate a website authentication credential, and transfer files between macOS systems. Those are the functions. So again, for those of you listening on the podcast side, our 4 protocols are LDAP, IMAP, SSH, and AFP. That's Alpha Fox Papa. And the 7 different protocols, 7 different functions are view the console of a remote Linux server, print to a shared Windows printer, move important emails to their own folder, query statistics from an internet firewall, encrypt all communication in a browser, validate a website authentication credential, and transfer files between macOS systems. Now, if you think you know the answer and they're already in order, then you want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's on your screen, and be able to put in the answers. If you think they're already in the right order, simply put 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and you're done. See how easy that was? That's not the right answer, but that's the idea. I don't want to make this too difficult to be able to do. Folks are already putting in their answers very slowly. That's when I know that it's really one you have to think about, because I watch how fast the questions and answers are, how fast they come in. So this is one where you could really get some interesting results from this, because it's a different number of protocols to functions. So you could potentially get all of these wrong very easily. You really do have to know your protocols, and you really have to know what these protocols do. It's not enough to know what the abbreviation is. Sometimes the abbreviation can help you, but sometimes the abbreviation is not completely obvious as to how this particular protocol is used. So it's not only important, well, it's sort of important to know what the acronym means, but it's perhaps more important to know what this protocol does, how it works on the network, how you would implement it, in what cases would this protocol be used. I think that's probably the more important piece of information. And in fact, when we start working with these sort of in the real world of networking, we almost never call these by their full names. We almost always use the abbreviations. So it even gets to a point after a while where we talk about, hey, did you set up that LDAP? And then we think, LDAP, what does LDAP even mean? What is that? We almost don't even remember. We have to stop for a moment, because we're so used to calling it by its abbreviation and knowing what that means, that the actual words in the acronym become less important, which is probably the way it works on almost every environment for folks that are working through this. Let's step through each one of these protocols and see if you match them up properly. We'll take the 4 protocols, LDAP, IMAP, SSH, and AFP, and let's see how we did with this. The first one is LDAP. That is the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. It's one of those that may not tell you everything about what this protocol does, but it's a very useful protocol if you need to authenticate into a system, especially if you have a centralized database. So for instance, when you go into work, there may be a Windows network and you use a Windows domain login with a username and a password. And then if you go to your wireless network may ask you to authenticate with those same credentials, and you may want to put in, you use the same credentials you used for Windows to log into the wireless. Then you go home and you want to connect to the VPN. When you connect to the VPN, it asks for credentials. And in fact, it's the same username and password. But you never set up 3 separate accounts with 3 separate usernames and 3 separate passwords that happen to be identical. All of this is accessing that information on one central authentication database, and LDAP is a very good protocol to use when you want to access or check against that authentication database. So that's a great one. Answer F is validate a website authentication credential, and that certainly maps to LDAP. Second on our list is IMAP. IMAP, not like Apple Maps, not like Google Maps. This is IMAP. This is whenever you see anything dealing with IMAP, an Internet Mail Access Protocol, or POP, the Post Office Protocol, it's all about email. And on our list, IMAP has some great functionality inside of it. It allows you to have multiple folders and move things between folders. It stores everything on a centralized server. So the answer here would be C, move important emails to their own folder. Absolutely one that you should be able to use. IMAP is probably the most common to be able to work with email. Sometimes you'll see POP3 used. There are a few cases with mail that I use where POP3 is my only option. I don't have an IMAP option, so that's what I end up using. But if you have the option IMAP, so much better than POP3. SSH is next on our list. SSH, of course, stands for Secure Shell, which means it maps back to viewing the console of a remote Linux server, which was answer A. Viewing that console, if you're on a remote device, maybe you're on a remote Windows machine, you want to view the console of that remote Linux device, you pop open an SSH client, connect to that device, authenticate, and now you can view the console of that remote Linux server. SSH commonly used for that. If you're in a network team and you're managing switches, routers, firewalls, and you need to connect to those devices to configure them, you're probably using SSH there as well. And lastly on our list, AFP, Alpha Fox Papa, is an Apple filing protocol, which means if you're transferring files between Mac OS, then you are using AFP to be able to do that. So that is one that very similar to in Windows, you would have SMB, the server message block. Well, Apple has their own flavor of transferring files. It's the Apple filing protocol, AFP. Answer G, transfer files between Mac OS systems. That means we did not use B, print to a shared Windows printer, D, query statistics from an internet firewall, or E, encrypt all communication in a browser. So for extra credit, let's go through each one of these and see if you know what protocol you would use to be able to do these things. The first is print to a shared Windows printer. I sort of gave this one away already. Windows has their own method of transferring data between Windows systems, that is server message block, or SMB. We also have query statistics from an internet firewall. Querying statistics makes me think that we're asking that firewall for some information, and it's going to respond back to us with those metrics, which means we're using the Simple Network Management Protocol, or SNMP, to be able to do that. And lastly, encrypting all communication in a browser. One way to do that, you've probably already used this multiple times today. You're probably using it right now. It's the HTTPS, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. And that's a very good one to be able to work through. If you're someone who is trying to transfer data in a browser, I think pretty much all of our browser communication these days either works with HTTPS or it should. If you still are hitting a website that is not encrypting all the data, then they probably need to update things so that you can have fully encrypted communication to those sites. So there's your answer. LDAP is validating a website authentication credential. IMAP is moving important emails to their own folder. SSH is viewing the console of a remote Linux server. AFP is transferring files between Mac OS systems. That is our matching for this month. Hopefully, that gives you a few extra things to think about. And certainly for your exam, knowing these protocols and the others, there's lots of protocols on the A+. Make sure you're familiar with all of them, because any of them could pop up in your exam. You would need to know what that protocol happened to do. Let's shift gears back to some multiple choice questions. I've got one here. Multiple choice. This multiple choice question asks, a technician needs to upgrade a laptop from 8 megabytes of RAM to 16 megabytes. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be a SODIMM, an M.2, a UEFI BIOS, a swap, or an SSD? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. As always, no questions in the chat room, no hints in the chat room, no answers in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're taking this exam, and we'll be figuring out how we would be answering this one. A technician needs to upgrade a laptop from 8 megabytes to 16 megabytes. which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be SODIMM, M.2, UEFI BIOS, swap, and SSD? Yeah, it is a little bit, this is an older system, isn't it? So you're dealing with an older amount of information. It probably would be gigabytes, yes. Probably would be. I have a feeling this question started off as something else, and then I went in and tweaked it. And so pretend it's gigabytes, although it could be megabytes. We're simply living in 1997, and we're upgrading our laptop from 8 megabytes to 16. Yeah, make it into gigabytes. I think we're fine. We'll figure it out. And one of the things I always work with whenever you're doing these types of changes to a system is that you have so many options available. And I tried to put all these different options on the screen to see what's there. And I think one of the options you have here should really fit perfectly for what you're doing. I think that's the best way to do it. Whenever you go through these questions and start looking at breaking down what these things should be, maybe there are answers that you know it can't possibly be. Throw those out. And when you start doing that, you may have a pretty good chance there to start really narrowing down what the proper answer might be. So it might jog a memory or two and be able to work through that. So you've got your 286 system and working through how much memory is in the system. Yeah, it could be a good process of elimination. I think you may be able to figure this out. Let's see how you did with this one. Technician needs to upgrade a laptop from 8 gigabytes of RAM to 16 gigabytes. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? And it would not have like the situation where you're dealing with other pieces of this. Let's see how you answered. The answers here, 86% of you said SODIMM is what you would use. So my oddly named or oddly configured question with 8 and 16 megabytes didn't throw you. It's absolutely SODIMM. That's what you would use to be able to find a laptop memory. It's a great one to use. M.2 is a type of interface, so that would not be what you would use, specifically a type of interface very commonly for storage. It can be used for other things as well, but it's commonly used for storage. The BIOS on your system, whether it's UEFI or legacy, is another one where you don't actually have to be able to know what starts your system up, but that is responsible for starting your system, but it doesn't help you when putting memory in a system. It would not be swap, which is a section of space on your storage drive. That's not what we would work with either. And lastly, an SSD is a storage drive itself, solid state storage specifically. Solid state storage is not memory, it's not RAM. So the answer is SODIMM. 87% of you chose SODIMM. It's kind of obvious when you get to that point. That would be the right answer because SODIMMs are perfectly designed to fit in a laptop, relatively small for their size. The small outline dual inline memory module, SODIMM, to be able to use that. If you're running a laptop, that's probably the memory type you have in there. Although these days we're seeing an increasing number of laptops where the memory is soldered onto the motherboard itself. It is permanently attached. You can't take it off. You can't add more. That's what you get. And you have to buy that system with the idea that, well, I'll be using this later, so maybe I'll buy some extra memory. This is an example of a SODIMM that somebody is installing into a computer. You can see they're relatively small, don't take up a lot of room, which is perfect for a laptop. And on many laptops, it's very easy to pop off the back, put the memory in there, and then put the cover back on. And it's a lot of people in the chat room saying, yeah, Apple's doing that. Oh, it's not just Apple. Everybody's doing the soldered memory these days. So Apple was ahead of the game, if you will. And then I think when all the other manufacturers realized they could get away with it, they decided we'll do it as well. And now we have laptops we can't upgrade the memory for. Nature of the beast, isn't it? But that is certainly a topic and a technique that you will need to know for your exam. Make sure you're familiar with it. Very easy to have this here. SODIMM is the right answer. That's the one we were looking for, and 87% of you were spot on with that one. Let's do another question. This question is a multiple choice question that asks, a web server administrator needs to provide 24/7 access from the internet to the server on an internal network. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Would it be a VPN, port forwarding, MAC filtering, UPnP, or QoS. A web server administrator needs to provide 24/7 access from the internet to the server on an internal network. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Would it be VPN, port forwarding, MAC filtering, UPnP, or QoS? That's what it is. Yes, folks in the chat room suddenly realizing, wait, this is live. We can't rewind this. We can't, even worse, you can't 1.5 times the speed, can you? This is what I sound like normally when I'm speaking in normal speed. It's not one of those where I'm speaking in a different. If you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link that's right here, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Be a good one to lock it in and see what it happens to be. I use probably all of these technologies at one point or another during the day, so it'd be a good idea to go through and figure out yours as well. This is also one you may be able to throw out some bad ones and kind of break down maybe 1 out of 4, 1 out of 3. Anything you can do to throw out what you know can't be right is really going to help you. So go through the process, see if you can figure out which ones these happen to be. A lot of you have already locked in your answers, so I can't wait to see what you think the correct answer might be with this. Whenever I start working through these, I always try to give you some options that could possibly be close to the right answer, but really are not the right answer. So we'll see how we do with this. Let's break down this question. It asked, a web server administrator needs to provide 24/7 access from the internet to the server on an internal network. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Is it VPN, port forwarding, MAC filtering, UPnP, or QoS? And we just aren't quite sure. We have 47% of us that say we would use a VPN because we're all using VPNs these days. It's something we've become very familiar with. So that's the one we think it is. 34% of us said port forwarding is what we would use. And then we have single digits. 9% said QoS, 6% said UPnP, and 5% said MAC filtering. So the real question is, which one of these would we use to be able to allow access to a server from the internet, which means you're probably going to have to hop through a firewall. There's probably going to need to be a firewall rule about that. And there needs to be some way to get data from outside the network to inside the network. What is it going to be? It's going to be port forwarding. That's what we're going to use. Port forwarding is what we call it in these smaller SOHO type firewalls. So if you have a wireless router, which is really a wireless router / firewall / switch / content filtering device, if you have one of those on your home network, then you're effectively changing the way that you NAT. This is network address translation, but instead of calling it NAT, because most people at home or in a SOHO won't know what NAT is, and it's kind of scary when you think about translating network interface IP addresses inside out. That's just too complicated. So we simply call it port forwarding. We're simply forwarding a port from the outside to the inside. It's a great way to set up 24/7 always on access to a particular resource that's on the inside. And it is a way, this is effectively a network address translation done very simply, specifically what you might call a destination network address translation or a static network address translation. So that is one that's very common to see. Now, this is one that, of course, as you are doing any configurations on your devices, there's a potential for a security issue. You want to be sure that you're only opening the ports that are necessary and that those ports are always being forwarded to a server on your network that you know is the right server. You do not want to do this with something that does not have the proper security associated with it, because you are effectively opening up this system to the internet. So that is why I always tell people, be very careful about making changes to network address translation, port forwarding, or anything that would allow access from the outside into the inside of your network. So that's the real issue. Port forwarding, if you want to see a visual of this, this is somebody on these IP addresses out here on the internet side communicating to the outside of your router, but you've told this router, hey, if anything comes inbound on port 80, port, then I want you to take that data and transfer that data over to the web server. So as soon as it hits that router, it knows, wait, there's a port forwarding configuration in here, and I need to take anything that was destined for 66.20.1.14 and modify or change the network address, translate the network address to 192.168.3.22, which means that that information will ultimately end up on that particular server, even though that server normally would not be accessible out on the internet. In fact, you've kept the same internal IP address, yet you're able to access it from the outside thanks to this port forwarding capability. Port forwarding was the right answer. 35% of you answered port forwarding for this one. 45%, the plurality of you, answered VPN, a virtual private network. Now, as people, if you're accessing google.com, espn.com, you go to professormesser.com, you're simply going to those websites by opening a browser, typing in that name in the browser address bar, hitting enter, and you visit that site. You don't need a virtual private network to be able to access professormesser.com or google.com or CompTIA.org or any of these other websites. So a VPN is unnecessary for gaining access to an internet that's on an internal network. Although VPNs can help you if you want to get around certain limitations, especially those where you have blocked everybody from your network, that is an option. But in this case, we're accessing a freely available internet out that's on a server. It just happens to be located on an internal network. Port forwarding is what you would use to be able to do that. Wouldn't it be awful if we had to load up a separate VPN client every time we wanted to visit a web server? That is not the way the internet works, thankfully, so VPN would not be the right answer. MAC filtering, or media access control filtering, not Apple Mac, but media access control Mac, is the one that allows you to filter out specific devices on a local network. In this particular case, we're not filtering anything. We're simply allowing a change to the IP address so we can access that server that's on an internal network. MAC filtering doesn't apply to either of those. Would not be quality of service, which allows us to set priorities for certain applications. In this case, we're not setting a priority. We're just getting access to the server. And lastly, UPnP. This is plug-and-play functionality. The way that it operates with your routers, when you start up an application on your machine, it tells the router, hey, open up a port number for the duration of this application being used. Then when you close the application, it updates your router so that port is closed. That doesn't provide you with 24/7 access, and it rarely provides access to a third device that's on your network. In this particular case, the best choice for this requirement is clearly going to be port forwarding. Answer B, and 34% of you got that one absolutely right. This is a great idea to be able to use this. Would a business router or firewall have port forwarding? Absolutely. But they don't call it port forwarding. They call it network address translation. So if you're installing a Palo Alto Networks firewall into your enterprise network, there's an entire section in there where you can set up network address translation. And that network address translation has many, many options in it that allows you to set inbound NAT, outbound NAT, destination NAT, source NAT. You can set a NAT that will allow information to come inbound and then go right back out again. A U-turn NAT, as we call it. There's all kinds of hairpin NATs. There's natting upon natting upon natting. And eventually, when you get to the point where you're managing these high-end firewalls, you'll need to know how to do all of those NAT types. But right now, for your SOHO devices and for the purposes of the A+, just knowing the internals of how NAT functions is good enough. You don't have to configure them or program them into any devices to earn your A+ certification. So don't worry too much about that. Now, one of the things you probably noticed as we've stepped through these questions so far is there's a lot of topics here, and we haven't even scratched the surface. We're just getting into some of these topics. There are thousands of topics across both the Core 1 and Core 2 exams. As you know, there are 137 videos just in my 1000 series course that take place on 18.5 hours of content. Now, I realize not everybody has the time to watch every single one of those, so I've created a set of course notes that have all of this information already in there. This is where you should go to have a complete consolidated view of everything from my videos. It's all in my course notes. There's both a physical version, which you can see here with the book that I have, and there is a digital version that you can see. I have this digital version up on the screen. Let's bring it over. There it is. There's the digital version, and you can see that just for the core one, it's 57, maybe 58 pages in length, and it is detailed. All the important graphics, all of the text, all of the charts, they are all in here in my course notes. They're available on my website. You can purchase the digital edition and start using it immediately. Download it and start looking through it. If you get the physical edition, it costs a little bit more because I have to print them and send them to you. But when you purchase the physical edition, you also get the digital edition for free. So instead of having to wait for the book to arrive, you can download it immediately and start reading through it, then simply wait for the book. I'll send you the tracking information. You'll know exactly where it happens to be. Those are my course notes. It's a great way to support the website. If you want to learn more, go to professormesser.com/1001notes. Let's do some more questions. Got another one on the list. Let's do a networking question that asks, a network technician needs to run a 10 gigabit per second network between a copper switch and a server. What is the minimum category of cable required for this task? Is it Category 3, Category 5, Category 5E, Category 6, or Category 6A? A network technician needs to run a 10 gigabit per second network between a copper switch and a server. What is the minimum category of cable required for this task? Is it Cat 3, Cat 5, Cat 5E, Cat 6, or Cat 6A? If you think you know the answer, go to this link right here, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to see how well we know and can match the differences between all of these. Let's see how we do with this. Between a copper switch and a server. I think we can assume in this particular case the copper switch and the server are in the same rack. I think that might help you. In fact, it really doesn't matter for this particular question. I'll explain why in a moment. But they could be, or we could say they're 100 meters apart. We could say that too. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. It's still the same answer. So I think I've just sort of stepped through and given you some hints on that one. Maybe that will give you some ideas of what it might be. But no, we're not talking about lengths of cable in this case. We're talking about minimum categories of cable. See how well you remember all of this. This is a one that does come up quite a bit in my emails too. I'll explain why in just a moment. But I get questions all the time and comments all the time. And the internet's very good at keeping me honest, because they will send me notes and saying, this is wrong. And I look at it and go, nope, that's right. Go look at the standard. I think other people may not get it right. As you step through this, see, I realize it's just a bunch of numbers. Category 3, 5, 5E, 6, and 6A. But there are dramatic differences between all of these. So make sure you're familiar with what these happen to be. This would be a good one to know. And this is one that you should be able to break down. And the question is extremely important here. Make sure you understand, and this applies to your exam, not just what we're doing today, but when you sit on your exam, pay very close attention to what the question is asking, not what you think the question is asking. They are very specific with their questions. They are worded in a very specific way. And I think this question is a good example of that, because the question is, what is the minimum category of cable required for this task? That's the question. Minimum category of cable. So make sure you're familiar with what you would use for this one. Let's see how you did with this. The question again was, a network technician needs to run a 10 gigabit per second network between a copper switch and a server. What is the minimum category of cable required for this task? Is it Cat 3, Cat 5, Cat 5E, Cat 6, or Cat 6A? Let's look at the results and see what you think. Well, we're not quite sure. 39% of you, the plurality of you, say it's Category 6. 26% of you say it's Category 5E. 18% said Category 6A. 13% said Category 5, and 4% said Category 3, which is technically Category 3, not in the CompTIA exam objectives. So if we want to know what categories of cable to use, what would the right answer be? Well, let's look at our chart. We know, for example, that Category 5 and Category 5E, if we look at the 1000 base T standard, which is 1 gig Ethernet over copper, Category 5 can extend that to 100 meters. And, of course, Category 5 and Category 5E, what they don't tell you, it's the same cable. It's exactly the same physical cable. But we apply additional testing to the Category 5E. And when we started doing the additional testing, we decided, let's not call it Category 5. Let's tell everybody we're calling it Category 5E so they know we did the additional testing on this Cat 5 cable. So, of course, Cat 5 and Cat 5E, because they are identical, they have identical support in the standards and identical maximum supported distance. It's the same cable. So, of course, they're identical. That's what I get most of my questions about in the email, by the way, because people will often tell me that Category 5 does not support 1000 base T, except the IEEE standards clearly state that 1000 base T absolutely is supported on Category 5 cable. So a lot of people will tell me that doesn't sound right, but in fact, that is absolutely correct. Now the question we have, though, is that this was a 10 gig link. And if we look at a Category 6 cable on a 10G base T, which is a 10 gig Ethernet standard, that standard supports Category 6 unshielded to 55 meters. But if it is a shielded Category 6, it can extend up to 100 meters. Therefore, Category 6 would be the minimum category required to support 10 gig over copper, at least with the 10G base T, which is the most common standard for 10 gig over copper. Now, there is a more augmented version of Category 6, which is a completely different type of cable. It's not the same as Category 6. It's an upgrade, if you will, to Category 6A, and that augmented supports 10G base T to 100 meters. There's no shielded or unshielded with this one. It can go 100 meters in either case. So the one for the minimum category of cable required for this task is indeed Category 6. If you answered D, 39% of you got that one absolutely correct. Category 6A is not a minimum. That's more of a maximum in this particular case, and they are very different. They have a very different cost associated with them. If you price out Category 6 cable versus Category 6A, you'll see that they cost very, very different amount of money. And our 6A is a little more difficult to install. Not much. It's more of a understanding, but they are different installation techniques for all of these because they're different types of cable. Category 5E and Category 5 are identical. You just can't buy Category 5 anymore. We don't put the label Category 5 on them because we do the additional tests. So we find out all the cables that are Category 5 are now called Category 5E. So those are great for gig networks, but don't work on 10 gig, or at least not supported in the standard for 10 gig. That means our minimum is indeed Category 6. If you answer D, 40% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another question. This question is one that asks, a cloud-based application instance has been automatically removed after the overall load was reduced. Which of the following would best describe this characteristic? Is that resource pooling, hybrid computing, rapid elasticity, community cloud, or metered service? A cloud-based application instance has been automatically removed after the overall load was reduced. Which of the following would best describe this characteristic? Is it resource pooling, hybrid computing, rapid elasticity, community cloud, or metered service? If you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to this link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. See what it happens to be. It could be all of them. All of the names sound like that's what it could be. That's the beauty of cloud computing. It's complicated enough so that you really have to get into it to understand what are they trying to ask of me. See if you know the answer. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. There's not a lot of space on the exam. There's not a lot of room on the exam for the cloud-based. If you look at the cloud-based exam objectives, there's not a lot of them. But it's a huge section of the exam itself. It's an entire domain. So you could expect maybe more cloud-based questions that, on average than perhaps others that you might find on the exams. Very interesting how they set up and plan for these types of topics. Let's see if you can go through this and really understand what's been asked of this particular question. And let's see how you answered this particular question. It is a cloud-based application instance has been automatically removed after the overall load was reduced. Which of the following would best describe this characteristic? Is it resource pooling, hybrid computing, rapid elasticity, community cloud, or metered service? 62% of you say that it is rapid elasticity. We have 19% that said resource pooling and 16% that said metered service. That's effectively a tie. And then we have effectively a tie for third between community cloud and hybrid computing with 2 and 1% between both of those. So the real question is, this is something that happens all the time in cloud computing. And it's one of the great benefits of cloud computing is that maybe with your particular company, your website gets very busy during holiday season. So right after Thanksgiving in the U.S., all the way up until after Christmas, it's very, very, very busy. So you might want to create multiple application instances behind the scenes that can support that entire load. But on December 26th, when the holiday is over, now we don't have that same load. So the great part about cloud computing is you can get rid of some of those application instances and pare down the resources that you happen to be using, which of course are easier to manage and cost less. Ultimately, you save a little money that way. That particular functionality, that way of scaling up and scaling down automatically in most cases, is called rapid elasticity. It's completely seamless. People have no idea how many services you're running behind the scenes. And it's a great way to have a site automatically adjust to the load that's being presented to it. So in this case, that fits our scenario perfectly because this cloud-based application instance has been automatically removed after the overall load was reduced. That is indeed rapid elasticity. It would not be resource pooling. Resource pooling is when you collect a bunch of resources into a large pool that you can then carve off pieces of those resources to create application instances. Resource pooling is great for that, but it doesn't describe the actual process of scaling down. It only describes where you get those resources to begin with or where you would return those resources once that instance was removed. So that's more of where you get all of this from. We're talking about the actual adding and removing of an instance to make that happen. So that is where you would go from those. Make sure you understand exactly the differences between those. There's also metered service. A metered service is one where they are billing you based on how much of this you are using. It is metered, very much like your electrical meter on the side of your house. Well, we're not talking anything about billing here. In fact, we don't even know if there is billing. This might even be our own internal cloud. In that particular case, there is no billing there. We bought this equipment, we're using it, and we don't bill for it internally. So there's nothing in the question about billing. So metered service would not be the option either. And then 2% said community cloud and 1% said hybrid computing. Community cloud, a large group of people using the same cloud, usually would have the same objectives in mind. And hybrid computing, not the right answer either. This is one where we have a mix between public and private cloud, which is relatively common, but in this particular case, not the question, not part of the question or topic that was associated with the question. The right answer here, the one that best fits this scenario where we are automatically spinning up or spinning down application instances automatically. I said automatically twice. Rapid elasticity, 63% of you got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer. Well done with this. In fact, if you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, one of the ways that you can receive an email from me that says you must have watched this is to follow these instructions. You want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. On the website is a link for Contact Us. It's really contact me. Contact us, and it will bring up a form that asks you for your name. Put your name in there. It asks you for your email address. put your email address in there. It asks for a subject line or a topic for this particular message. And if you would put that this is the May 2022 Core 1 study group, and then put the super secret code word of the month on the subject line, the super secret code word of this month is Community Cloud. See a curveball there. Community Cloud is the super secret code word of the month. And then in the body of the message, you can put anything you would like. I do read through every single one of these. I love the messages you folks put in there. I'm not able to respond back to all of them because I get hundreds of these CE requests every month. But I do like reading through, and I do read through every single one of them. So thank you for sending them. Again, the top or bottom of the website, click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address in the subject line, put the May 2022 Core 1 study group, and then put the words Community Cloud. And then the body of the message, put anything you'd like, send that to me. It takes me about a week or so to turn these around and get them back to you. I've been doing pretty well lately, thankfully. We'll see how well this continues. I don't want to ruin the whole thing, but I will try to get this back to you in a week or so that you can receive that email. It's a digitally signed email. That's what's going to be in the attachment to you, showing that nobody changed this email between the time I sent it and the time that you are reading it. You could even validate it if you're running some type of PGP, GPG, or some other type of compatible application to be able to do that. Now, I know it's top of the hour, but let's do one more. Let's get another question in. We got time for another question. This question asks, a macOS user is complaining of a spinning beach ball cursor when starting applications. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it that the SSD is failing, the BIOS startup drive is incorrect, it has a incorrect video resolution, it has incorrect user credentials, or it is the incorrect power supply voltage setting? A macOS user is complaining of a spinning beach ball cursor when starting applications. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be the SSD is failing, the BIOS startup drive is incorrect, an incorrect video resolution, incorrect user credentials, or an incorrect power supply voltage setting? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Be a great way to do it. See if you happen to know what these are. This would be a good one if you ever are working through the questions themselves. Make sure you read very carefully what the possible answers are, because sometimes they throw answers in that could not possibly be correct. They are obviously wrong. This is sort of a gimme, so you can throw some of these out. Now, in what we do with what we are working through, we're going through each one of these, and I'm giving you 5 possible answers. You could get questions on your exam with 5 possible answers, but there's really 4 that you get on the exam. Very commonly, you get 4. Sometimes you'll get more than 4, but most of the questions on the exam have 4 answers on them. So this is one you do need to know about. Let's see how we do with this one. The question again was, a Mac OS user is complaining of a spinning beach ball cursor when starting applications. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it that the SSD is failing, the BIOS startup drive is incorrect, an incorrect video resolution, incorrect user credentials, or an incorrect power supply voltage setting? Let's see how you answered. 73% of you say, it's the SSD. The SSD is failing. 11% of you say it's an incorrect user credential. We have effectively a tie for third between a BIOS startup drive being incorrect and an incorrect video resolution, with 6 and 7% itself. And then an incorrect power supply voltage setting, 3% of you chose that one. 74% is a pretty strong response for this. The problem with this spinning beach ball of death, they call it, is that it can be quite a pain. So you're moving around the screen, you're clicking on things, and maybe you try to start an application like this user did, and your cursor suddenly turns into a beach ball and it just spins. It is just sitting there. And while it is spinning in this beach ball mode, it's very similar to the sand going through the hourglass in Windows, like or with the newer version of Windows, the little circle, while you're waiting for it to do something and there's nothing you can do. You can't click on anything. Nothing is working. You have to wait for this to to stop what it's doing. Hopefully it will stop someday. I'm going to manually stop this thing from doing this. This is technically not called the beach ball of death. Technically, this is the Mac OS X spinning weight cursor. That's what this is. It's giving you some feedback that something is happening, and while that thing is happening, you can't use your system. Normally, this would not be happening. You do not want all of this to occur. This is really the problem. Sometimes it starts up with the spinning ball, and it never stops, and you never gain control of your system. You have to power it down and power it back up. Could be an application that has gone a little squirrely, maybe a bad driver of some kind, or maybe it's busy paging to disk because you're low on memory. It's low resources are available, and that's what's causing the spinning ball. Sometimes the spinning ball happens for a second, and then it goes away, and you're back to normal. But it does happen, and it can be a problem. And the thing that we're concerned about, maybe it's bad hardware. Maybe there's something in your system itself that's preventing this from working properly. There may be information in the logs that you can access, but more often than not, it's something that you're going to have to do some hardware diagnostics to be able to see how your hardware is performing. Usually the logs can help you quite a bit, at least pinpoint what it is, in some cases what it is not. But the spinning beach ball cursor can be really, really annoying to be something like this. So I would hope that when your if an SSD is failing, a hard drive is failing, some type of storage is failing, and you're accessing that storage, and every time you access that storage, maybe to start an application, it gives you the spinning ball. That certainly indicates it could be hardware related. But it could be other things. It could be software related. Some folks in the chat room saying, could it be an application issue? It could be. As I mentioned here, it could absolutely be an application bug, an update problem, something like that. You'll have to figure out what the problem is and either fix the application, reinstall, remove it, or replace the bad hardware that you happen to have. And if it's a resource issue, you need to add more resources. If you're running low on memory and it's paging to disk, maybe add more memory to your system. So the correct resolution to this issue is going to be based on what you ultimately find the root cause to be. So the spinning ball of death is not the root cause. The spinning beach ball of death is a symptom telling you that there's some other type of problem. And in this particular case, you're going to have to spend some time really going through this and see if you can absolutely figure it out. I think that's going to be your biggest problem, your biggest challenge in making something like this, is that it could be almost anything. You're going to have to start breaking things in two. Is it happening on this side? Is it happening on this side? Okay, it's still happening over here. Let's break that in two, kind of break down where the problems could possibly be when working through it. That is the real key for resolving these issues. The SSD failing is the only one it could really be in this case. What other choices? Incorrect user credentials. Well, if you had incorrect user credentials, you would have never been able to start and get into your computer at all to even start an application. So we know it's not incorrect user credentials. 8% of you said an incorrect video resolution. That might cause the screen to be very big or very small, but it would not cause a spinning ball of death. That would be bad. If you just set a bad resolution, suddenly your system doesn't work. That's not how resolutions work. And then a BIOS startup drive being incorrect. If the startup drive was wrong, then the system wouldn't start. You wouldn't have an application to run because your operating system wouldn't have started. So it can't be that one. And then an incorrect power supply voltage setting, same problem. If the voltage is wrong, your system's not going to boot. The system doesn't boot. There's no operating system. If there's no operating system, there's no spinning beach ball cursor. So the only option here, in fact, it says the most likely reason, the only one that really gives a credible reason for this occurring is answer A. The SSD is failing, and 74% of you said that one is the correct answer. 74% of you were absolutely correct. Well done with that one. Well, all of the questions we went through today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you have not downloaded these objectives, you are missing a key piece to your studies. This will tell you everything you need to know about what the exam will ask. I get this question all the time. What do I need to study? What topics could they possibly test us on? You need to read the objectives. They tell you everything you need to know. They are very, very valuable in being able to find what you're looking for. Make sure you get those. I have a link to the objectives on my site. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and follow that link over to the CompTIA website. or simply go to the Google machine and type in CompTIA Exam Objectives. It will take you right to them. Make sure you download the latest ones. Sometimes they make minor changes, or usually it's a spelling fix, or they change what one particular word is. Not a lot of major changes between the versions, but it's always nice to know you have the latest version, and you always get the latest version when you do this on the CompTIA website, CompTIA's website, or go to professormesser.com/objectives and take the link over to the CompTIA website. We do one of these study groups every month. I have one 2 days from now. So come on back on May the 12th. Today's May the 10th. Come back on May the 12th. We'll do the Core 2 A+ study group. And then next week is Network Plus. The week after that is the Security Plus. And then next month, we have this same study group on the 7th of June. The other A+ is on the 9th of June, et cetera, et cetera. Now, those dates could change. Sometimes my life, as most, it can be chaotic at times. Sometimes I have to reschedule. So I'm telling you this now, but a month from now, it might be very different. That's why I always tell you, make sure, double check, go to professormesser.com/calendar to make sure you know when the next event is going to be. And another good one is to, of course, go through and in Discord, in the events channel, I also update those events. That's a very good one to go through. So that will be extremely useful if you are looking to know when the next event is going to be. And if you're watching this on a replay, then you have to go to the calendar, because this may be well after May or June when you are watching this video. Well, can you believe we went through all of these topics? Stick around for the after show. I'll take your questions in the chat room, whatever you'd like to ask. I don't have to answer any of them, but I will take your questions, in that we do answer most of the ones that come through. Don't forget about the voucher discounts available at professormesser.com/vouchers. We have our course notes. I didn't even talk about the practice exams today, but of course we have practice exams on our site too. Let's do one of those questions. Since somebody asked for another question, I've got one here. Let's do a practice exam question. I'm going to pull one directly from my practice exam book. This is the practice exam book that's available on my website. It has 3 full 90-question practice exams, along with 5 performance-based questions for each one of those. So 15 performance-based questions in this book. This is the digital version of the book. The question asks, a system administrator has connected an external USB drive to a computer to transfer some documents. When booting the computer, the system tries to boot from the external drive and gives an error message. Which of the following would be the best way to prevent the USB drive from booting? Should we modify the BIOS to boot from the internal hard drive? Should we modify the boot order in the Windows Disk Management? Should we rebuild the MBR on the external hard drive? Or should we disable the external drive in Device Manager? Now, if you think you know the answer, then you can either click on the quick answer option. This is a PDF, but there are links built into the PDF. So you can flip over to page 31, which is certainly what you would do if you were had the book in your hand. Or you would go to the details page on page 40. I'm just going to click the details, which jumps me to page 40 in the PDF. You don't have to scroll through the PDF. That would be ridiculous. Same question is there, and it shows you the answer is A, modify the BIOS to boot from the internal hard drive. And then I tell you why you would modify the BIOS. I give you an explanation of why that's the right answer. But of course, if you've ever taken a test online, you've taken sample questions from other places, they never seem to tell you why the wrong answers were wrong. So in my book, every single wrong answer is documented. So answer B, C, and D were not correct, and here's why. Well, B was you modify the boot order in Windows Disk Management. C is rebuild the MBR. D is disable the external drive. I tell you why those aren't the right answer. So you can go through each one of those and really understand, if you got it wrong, why you got it wrong. I'll also tell you, if you're doing this in the book and you get the question right, don't just flip to the next question. I highly recommend that you read through the wrong answers, because those are real topics from the exam objectives. It's possible on your actual exam, you might get a question about topics that were wrong on my exam. So it's a good way to make sure you really understand the nuances of a particular series of topics. Also, if you didn't understand the question, which sometimes happens to me, I've got a link at the very bottom that will take you to the video that had this question. so you can watch this section of the video and understand why that particular question applied to these technologies. There's also a QR code, so if you point your phone at it, you can play it on your phone. You can click it and take the link that's here. Or since you're in a browser here or a PDF reader, I can click the back button in my PDF reader and simply go to the next question that's on the list. So it's a very easy way to step through the entire practice exams book that is available on my website, professormesser.com/1001success. Don't forget about following us on the Twitter, on the YouTube, on the Instagram, and everywhere else. And if you like this video, I would love it if you'd give it a thumbs up. I know that's what all the YouTube people say, but that's the only way that we have to tell YouTube that this is something that other people think is valuable. And it does really go a long way to making sure that other people can find these resources. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube or simply click the thumbs up video that's in your YouTube player right now. Plenty to see there. Well, stick around for the after show. I'll take your questions. Thank you for being here in this first hour. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Core 1A+ study group. Okay, let's get some things flipped around here. I'm going to take a little sip of water. Here we go. And we'll break this around. Actually, that's not water. No, that's coffee. We will step through each one of these questions as they're coming in. I'll start, though, before we get to a question. Jonathan in the chat room with the $5 super chat. Thank you, Jonathan, for your support. Jonathan writes, "Thank you. I earned my A+ cert last week. Would not have without your videos, course notes, and practice tests." Much better than I could have ever said it, Jonathan. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your super chat. Thanks for your ongoing watching of the videos and the course notes and the practice exams and everything that we do. I'm glad they were able to provide you with some help with your studies. We have built these materials so that you can pass your exam. I love to get the stories about when people finally get that A+ cert. It is a deal breaker. It's something where you can show up with that A+, show it to people, and they go, okay, yeah, we need to get you on board so you can do more of this for us. Very, very useful for that. So I'm going to take questions from the chat room. If you are on my website at professormesser.com/live, there's a chat embedded at the bottom of the screen. If you're on YouTube, there's a chat embedded into the screen that you're watching the video. It's the same chat. So I'm watching that chat as it goes by, and I'm taking questions that people are asking as they are going through this chat. So feel free to go through and ask any questions you might have. I don't know that I can answer every question that comes in, but I try to get to all of them. Let's start with a question that came in from Reef, who says, if you don't pass the exams, how soon are you allowed to retake them? So let's have a look. I went over to the CompTIA website. That is not the CompTIA website. This is the CompTIA website, which says the CompTIA certification retake policy. Of course, there's a policy already for this. The policy says that if you fail your first attempt, CompTIA doesn't require any waiting period between the first and second attempt. However, before your third attempt or any subsequent attempt to pass an exam, you shall be required to wait for a period of at least 14 calendar days from the date of your last attempt to pass such an examination. So there's a bit of a cool down period. After you fail the first time, you can immediately go take it again. And you fail the second time, now you're on a 14-day calendar day waiting period. So you have to wait 14 days, then you can take it a third time. If you fail the third time, you wait 14 days, take it the fourth. If you fail the fourth time, you wait 14 days. So after that point, you're waiting 14 days after that second failure to be able to take the exam again. And that's kind of it. It's not more complicated than that. That's the retake policy. That's all they require is just a little wait between the second and any subsequent exam attempts. So that's an easy one to at least remember. But all of the policies are on the CompTIA website. You can always check them out on their site. If you happen to forget, so it's a long time from now, you're thinking, what was it? Was it a week? Was it 2 weeks? Was it a month? Just type in the CompTIA certification retake policy, and you can find it on the CompTIA website. Easy, easy, easy to do. So let's have a look at other questions that have come through. Can I use this study session code? That would be the CEUs we talked about earlier, the continuing education units. Can I use that towards renewal for Security Plus or just A+? Well, I think that would be a good question to ask on the continuing education step of the website. I'm going to go out there and see if we can find the information regarding the renewal process. I think in that particular case, we're collecting continuing education units. So we're doing a lot of different things to be able to renew everything that's coming through. Whenever I start looking at working and finding CEUs, it can be a challenge, but CompTIA has a pretty broad CEU requirement. And they say, if the topic is one that is on the exam or something close to that, I can't find the exact text of this at this very second, but it's one that gives you a lot of leeway as to what you are collecting. I think I've got some CEU comments here. I have some for industry. The documentation we're looking for, at least 50% of the content of the thing you're taking must relate to one or more of the exam objectives for the certification you're renewing. So as long as it relates to one or more of those, you're good. So in my particular case, the A+ study group has networking in it. The Core 2 study group has security in it. The networking, obviously, Network Plus, networking and Security Plus, there are networking and security components in every single one of these exams. Therefore, I think they should all be relatively easy to submit a CE regardless of what you happen to be watching. So that one makes it very, very simple. They don't try to lock you out. They try to make sure that you can continue to earn CEUs regardless of what you're doing. Another question from the chat room: which program should I use to get the links working in my PDF? Now, you may have seen this. We were looking at the links in my practice exams book that we could click things like the details, and it takes us to page 40, and we can go through this link, and then this PDF reader happens to have a back button in it, and it goes back to where you started. That functionality, I have found, is available in most PDF readers. Most PDF readers support clicking on a link, and not as many, but still a lot of them support the ability with a back button to back up to where you were originally. So that's something you need to look at the PDF reader you are using. It either supports it or it doesn't. And since most of them do, it shouldn't be too hard to find them. Some readers do not have an obvious back button, but they have keystrokes that you can push. So you may have to look at the documentation for your PDF reader. Best thing I can recommend is just give it a shot. Just give it a try and see if your PDF reader will work with it. I recommend Adobe's PDF reader, Adobe Acrobat, which is their PDF reader. That's the one that works the best because they're the ones that have the standard for the PDF, and it works great. That's although the one I'm showing you on my screen is the PDF reader that comes inside of Mac OS. It's called Preview. I don't think you can see that. It's called Preview. It's built into Mac OS. It's a built-in PDF reader, but you'll find most PDF readers, even PDF readers that are in browsers, mini browsers, can play PDF or show PDFs, display PDFs, and those work just as well as anything else that I've used. So try your PDF reader. I think you'll find lots of options available, and ultimately, the CompTIA, the Adobe Acrobat reader is the one that works. I know works with everything because I've used it with everything. Amy Cloud in the chat room: hey, Professor, first time catching a live session. $10 super chat from, is it Amy Cloud or AMI Cloud? Regardless, it's a $10 super chat. I'll call you whatever you'd like me to call you. Too bad I no longer need the live session. Passed my A+ last week. Thanks to you. Congratulations on your A+. The videos, practice exams, and my Yankee cards really got me through it. Fantastic. That's the way to do it, is you use all of the resources you could possibly need to be able to get all of these objectives in your noggin so that you can go to the exam and get everything out of your brain onto the screen that's in front of you. Great way to do it. Congratulations on your A+, and thank you very much for the $10 super chat. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for keeping the lights on here. More questions from the chat room. Christopher says, hi, Professor. Should you get Network Plus before Security Plus? Is it essential to get certified in both A Plus and Network Plus first in order to get Security Plus? Well, I'm a bad person to ask because the first CompTIA certification I earned was my Security Plus. Then I earned my Network Plus. Then I earned my A Plus. I did it backwards to what most people say you should do. Most people say you should take the A Plus first, then the Network Plus, then the Security Plus. And neither of these is wrong or the wrong way to do it, but there are some advantages and disadvantages depending on what you're trying to do. The reason I took Security Plus first is that I was working in a role that was in a security company. I was working with Network Associates, a company that technically doesn't exist anymore. You know them as McAfee now. For a period of time, they changed the name from McAfee Associates to Network Associates, and then ultimately changed it back to McAfee. While the time it was Network Associates, I was a systems engineer for McAfee, and we had antivirus, we had IPS, IDS, we had firewalls, we had PGP encryption, we had a lot of security. And so it was important for me in my role as a systems engineer to be knowledgeable in all things security, and Security Plus was a good certification to take to prove to at least others that at least something I knew was security related. And so I took that one first. And then I thought, well, that was fun. Let's go get some more of these. And I thought, let's get Network Plus. Let's get A Plus. And that's about the time when I thought there needs to be more resources for these exams available. And that's when we started creating our video series to be able to have that. So that's why I did it in that form. Now, today, and the way that we do renewals today, once you earn your A Plus and you take Network Plus will renew your A Plus certification. And then Security Plus will renew A Plus and Network Plus. So there are some renewal benefits for taking in the order of A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus. Going backwards, if you earn your Security Plus and then you go take your Network Plus, that doesn't renew anything. You don't have anything worth renewing at that point because Network Plus is considered a lower level cert than Security Plus, at least from a renewal perspective. And then you then go and take the A Plus. A Plus isn't renewing anything. So now you have 3 separate certifications. All 3 of them, if you took Security Plus, Network Plus, and A Plus, all have different renewal timeframes, which is not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker, but it is something you have to just manage and make sure that you don't miss any of those renewals. Now, fortunately, at that point, if you go back and renew your Security Plus, it will renew all of the other certifications. So that's why I say it's not that big of a deal. You can always sort of fix the renewal process later on down the road. Not an issue. You need to earn the certification exams that fit best for what you're doing in your career, for your job hunt, or whatever you're doing to earn that certification. So there's no formal prerequisites for the Security Plus. Anybody can take a Security Plus exam without any type of training, without any type of previous certification, without anything. Just walk in and take it. So it doesn't matter from that perspective. Just take the exam that makes sense for what you are doing. More questions from the chat room. What if I fail one of the 2 A Plus exams? Do I have to retake both of them when it's time to retake the exam, or just the one you failed? Well, there's 2 things to think about here, especially now since there are 2 series of exams that are currently available to take for A+. There's the 1001 and 1002. There's the 1101 and 1102. These are 2 different series of exams. You have to take both exams from the same series to be A+ certified. So you have to take the 1001 and 1002 or the 1101 and 1102. You cannot take the 1001 and the 1102. Those are from different series. That doesn't work. You will not earn your A+ if you do that. You have to take both exams from the same series. This becomes an issue right now because the 1001 and 1002 retire on October the 20th. So the last day that you can take these exams is October the 20th. Back to your original question. Let's say you take the Core 1 exam and then you take the Core 2 exam. You pass the Core 1, but you fail the Core 2. Do you have to go back and take both of them over again? Thankfully, no, you do not. You just have to go back and take the one you failed, the Core 2. And at that point, you have to make sure you take both of the Core 1 and Core 2. If they are the 1001 and 1002, you have to take both of them before they retire, this particular case, on October the 20th. Now, I mentioned earlier, let's say you're like me and it takes you 9 months to take a certification exam. In that particular case, the 1001 and 1002 isn't going to work for you because they're going to retire in October, and then that's it. You're not going to be able to take those exams because they're retired. In that case, you'll probably take the 1101 and 1102, which just came out in April. Its exam retirement is November 2025. So the next question that's very common here is, how close together do you have to take these exams? There's no requirement that you take them close together at all. You could take the 1001 today, and you can take the 1002 in November of 2025. As long as you pass both of them before they're retired, you're A+ certified. Don't really recommend waiting 3 years to take your certification exam, though. Not what you should be doing, but you could, and it would be just fine. You would earn your A+ certification. So those are the very common logistical questions about earning the certification and where those come from. That's a great place to think about which one you would use to be able to do that. As an adjunct to that, people in the chat room saying, so can the 1000 series exam and can those videos be used for the 1100 series? I don't recommend ever studying for an exam by using a different set of study materials for a different exam series. It's just a bad idea. The exam objectives, although similar, are quite different. And I'm going to pull up on my browser here the differences between these. I think it's important to consider this when you're putting together your studies and you're trying to figure out the best way to go about doing this. So I'm going to load this up here so we can really see what these happen to be. I'm going to pull up the differences for the 1100 series exams. We're going to look specifically at the 1101 objectives. Now, the way I do this is I take every objective and I stick it in a spreadsheet, and I evaluate on the topics from the exam objectives which ones are new and which ones are from a previous version. So, for instance, on the 1101, the series version 3 of 1101, the 220 1101 exam in section 1.1 for laptop hardware, which is what I call it, given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components, hardware and device replacement for battery, keyboard keys, random access memory, hard disk drive, SSD replacement, wireless cards. Now, of that, 4 of those topics I just mentioned were in the older version on the 220-1001 in section 1.1, but 2 of those topics are new. So there's just enough new in the exam that if you studied from older materials, you would probably fail. Let's go and look at, for example, let's scroll down, scroll all the way to the bottom where I have my summary of the details. So of the exam in the 220-1101, the percentage of 1101 objectives that are new, 28% of that exam is new. So almost a third of this exam is new. Getting close to a third of this exam is new. Can you imagine studying from old materials, walking into the new exam, the best you're going to score is a 70%? That's not very good. And it goes down from there. That's almost a fail already. So I highly recommend you study from those. Let's do the same thing with 1102. In the 1102, 36.21%, 36% of that exam, almost 40% of the 1102 is new, even more. So the best you're going to get is like a 64 on that exam if you walked in by studying older materials. You failed. So that's why I tell people, do not take old materials to study for a new exam. Bad idea. Bad. Don't do it. And I think that is that's a perfect example. That's a numeric, quantitative example. It's not just me the feeling that it's bad. It really is bad. So make sure you study from materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. And if you suddenly change your mind, you think, well, I was going to take the 1001, now I'm going to take the 1101, you should automatically be thinking, and now I need to buy all new 1101 materials. Now I need to go back and watch 1101 content. But here's your problem as we sit here in May, that this just came out 30 days ago, 20 days ago. Not even 20 days ago, this came out. So this is a relatively new exam. So this is one where all of the people that produce exam materials are in the process of building out these exam materials. It's very new in the process. This happens every time a new exam is released. So it usually takes about 3 months to finally see a good set of choices on the market from many different publishers for a single exam. So that's why I tell people, right now, you probably don't want to study for the 1100 series. There's just not enough books, videos, exams, or anything else available. Not a good choice of them anyway. You probably want to stick to the 1000 series. In another 2 to 3 months, there will be more options available. In fact, if you go to my website, I already have these are not the 1100. This is the 1001 course notes, but they're a very similar version. The 1101 and 1102 course notes are already on my website, and there are already videos available. We're starting to build out the 1101 videos. So there's new content coming. This morning, I edited 4 new videos. They're not even uploaded yet. Well, they are uploaded, but they're not released. So there's just constant motion going on behind the scenes you don't even see. But an extensive amount of videos that are going to be recorded, edited, and posted in the next 2 months. So that's why I tell you, probably not the best time to shift gears at this point. But maybe if 2 months from now, 3 months from now, we can think about doing that. Might be a good idea to think about which one we might want to choose if we do that. Now, I do have other resources on my site that are directly from CompTIA. There are books, there are labs. Their lab for the 1001 is ridiculous. It's a 3D lab. I got to show this to you because I was playing around with this earlier, except I got to bring up a different browser. It does not work in Safari. That is the only drawback. And you Mac people that are out there, you feel me, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Not all websites work great on the Mac OS side. Maybe they'll be able to fix some of that. But let me log in with my CompTIA login to be able to see this. And I don't remember my CompTIA login. So I will be doing this and taking other questions, and I will get to this lab in just a moment. But I think it's a great lab to work with. It's a lot of fun, and all of these are on the website. You'll see more and more of these, though, as things sort of progress and work through over the next 2 months or so. That's usually how it works. Usually after 3 months after an exam is released, there is plenty to find out there. So that's where they would come from. I think if you are someone who is working through all of these, you'll know that labs can be very, very useful. So let me bring up the labs. I have lots of labs I work with here. So here are the CertMaster labs for Core 1 and Core 2. I'm just going to show you the Core 1 labs. This is sort of new. There have not been a lot of Core 1 labs available. And now from CompTIA, there suddenly is. And so let's install a motherboard. I think that's a good one to work with. We'll bring this up. This is, you're gonna think this is crazy. It's like a video game now. So over here is the instructions on what you can do to install your motherboard. How do you install a motherboard in a lab? How would that work? Well, they put you at a desk. And let's do the lab mode in what I call assisted mode. You have other options here. I'm going to start this lab. Okay, well, here's our lab. We can move around. We can rotate. We can work with things that are on the desk. And we can work with these scenarios. Let me make this a little bit smaller so we can see what we're doing here. And it even tells you this is assisted mode, so it tells you what to do. Place the computer case on its left side with the right side facing up. So we click the computer and it turns over onto its side. Okay, good. Remove the rear case screws for the right side system cover. So if we go up to this machine, if we click the screws, We can click, click, click. Oh, there the screw fell out. And we'll click, 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 click. Is the others? Oh, no, we need the ones for the top. So this one here, and it's telling us, no, you dummy. Click the screw. There you go. And then you click the top, and the top slides off. And you now have access to the motherboard, or the place where the motherboard would go on the inside of the computer, if you don't zoom up too close. You get the idea, though. This is what you would use. Then it tells you, okay, now before you put the motherboard in, install the ESD wrist strap to the connector hub on the mat. So here's the mat. So we'll grab the ESD wrist strap, which would be this one right here on the my mouse was not made for this. So we'll click that strap, we'll plug it into the ESD, and now we're using our ESD strap. Very important when you're working with a motherboard. Now you install the motherboard standoffs, which are the ones over here. So that you get the idea. Now you'd start working with the standoffs. Where do I put them? Well, you put one in here. There they go. Putting the standoffs in there. Let's finally, and then so you can step through. Now put the rear input-output shield, which is on this. That's the one that fits on the back of the computer. All of these are available on the labs they have here. You can see there's the space there for the I/O shield, and then you put the I/O shield on there. So a lot of fun to kind of play around with. You don't have to have a computer. You just use the labs. Those are the CompTIA labs, the CertMaster labs. A discount for these labs is available on my website. In fact, if you buy the labs on my website, you get the Core 1 and Core 2 course notes, or the Core 1 course notes for the Core 1 lab for free, the Core 2 course notes with the Core 2 lab for free, or if you get both labs, you get the Core 1 and the Core 2 course notes for free. So those are a little bonus. You don't get those on the CompTIA website. Plus, they're discounted. So they're available out there on the website. If you go to ProfessorMesser.com, I'll show you where they are. Directly on the website page, if you scroll down on this main menu on the main home page, you have all the Core 1 here under CompTIA A plus Core 1, and then the 1101 videos, 1101 course notes, and the 1101 study recommendations. And that will take you to the page with the study recommendations. And those have the course notes, the books. There are Core 1 and Core 2 books for the 1101 and 1102. The labs I just mentioned, there's the graphics for the labs for the Core 1 and Core 2, and then plenty of Q&A. So you've got options here to work through. All of this is available on the Professor Messer website. Just another option along with the videos. If you think you might need labs, I've used these labs. I've worked through them. I know the people that have built them. They're really good labs, not just on the Core 1 with the 3D, but the Core 2 labs. When you're working at the command line, you're working with Windows. It's a full virtualized environment. In fact, I started one up the other day that was a lab. Let me see if I can find it, because this is what happened when I loaded up this lab. I'm going to pop out of the lab that I'm currently using. We're going to return the lab to the very beginning. And let's go through some of the other labs that we have on here. We're going to leave the lab that's here. I'm going to scroll down to the Core 2, and I think it was a troubleshooting lab. I'm going to see if I can find it, because it was a really good lab, but it was surprising to me. It was a Windows 10 lab. I'm going to look at all these labs. They're just huge with labs. Windows 11, Windows System Setting, Task Manager, Performance, Command Line Tools, Installations. I'm looking for one that was a troubleshooting lab. Maybe it's down here. So Windows 10 troubleshooting issue. I can't find it right now, but I will hunt it down because it was kind of surprising to me when I worked through it. And I want to be able to show that to you when you get into it. It effectively started the lab, and then Windows, as you were starting the lab, Windows gave the Windows 10 blue screen and restarted. And it was part of the lab. It was, you have to troubleshoot a Windows 10 restart issue. I thought the lab was broken, but it wasn't. The problem was one that you have to fix. It was supposed to give you a blue screen. So the lab was built to break. I just love that with these labs. Very, very useful to have that there. So make sure you're familiar with some of those offerings that can really make a difference if you're planning on your studies to make that happen. It was a pretty cool lab to work through. With the 3D, is it something people would need a newer processor or graphics card? No, it's not that type of real-time 60 frame per second full first-person shooter type scenario, it will effectively work on everybody's computer. It doesn't require enormous graphics. It runs fine on the built-in graphics that are in a CPU, for example. You don't even need an external graphics card. It works great to be able to have that there. Other questions from the chat room. Yeah, the people in the chat room have already solved the problem. It's capacitors. That's what was causing it to reboot. I always like the problems you just make up an answer to. Well, that was it's capacitors is your problem. That's the issue. When you're working through them, I don't think that was the issue. And having those. They even have managing help desk tickets in here. They have a help desk set up, and you have to take help desk tickets because that's one of the scenarios that you have on the new version of the exams, which is kind of nice because that's what everybody ends up doing, right? We always end up working through some type of help desk scenario. That's almost always our first job to work through that. Are the labs free? No, these are CompTIA CertMaster labs. They are not free. Sadly, let's see what the price of the labs and the lab packs are. The interactive lab packs on my site are available. The Core 1 or Core 2 is $109. If you get the combo pack, it's $208, which is a $50 savings over the retail price on the CompTIA website. And then you can choose which one you'd like. And as I mentioned, they all come, those are all the labs, and they come with the course notes also. If you already have the course notes, it's an upgrade. So you don't have to pay extra. You get a discount off of that number because you've already paid for course notes earlier. There's always an upgrade path on my website. So you never have to buy anything twice. You could just get a discount over the next thing you purchase, which I think is a good way to do it on the lab. So no, sadly, they are not free, but they are quite good. I don't know. I've looked at a lot of labs through the years. I've worked with labs from many different manufacturers. I have to tell you that the CompTIA labs that they've just put out, the CertMaster Labs product, is a great product. It is spot on. It's the best set of labs I've used for A+. So that's saying something. CompTIA, over the last number of years, has started creating their own content. They've got professionals within CompTIA that have done this for a very long time. They've worked with these technologies. Like me, they come from a technical background where we've used these in the field. We've done real-time troubleshooting of security, of networking, of operating systems, and they know when they create these labs that these are valid labs to use. So makes pretty good. Does it make sense to purchase the labs if they're for the 1100 series, not the 1000? Always use materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. So no, you would not purchase the 1100 labs if you're taking the 1000 exam. You would not purchase 1000 labs if you're taking the 1100 series of exams. But CompTIA does not have, for the 1000 series, they don't have Core 1 labs. So everything I just showed you in that set of labs is for the 1101 and 1102. So there are Security Plus labs also on the Professor Messer website. Under the Security Plus training option, there's an option here for Security Plus study recommendations. The Security Plus study recommendations almost look identical with the ebooks, the study packs, and of course, there's a secure set of Security Plus labs as well. Those are also quite good, or else they wouldn't be on my website. I go through every single thing that I post on my website. There's a cost associated with it. I try it first, and if I don't like it, it doesn't go on my website. There's a lot of things I've tried that I've not put on my website that, like, this is a stinker. We're not even going to tell people that this even exists. But the CompTIA is really good. The ones that are there, I put there. The CertMaster labs are quite good. They're very good. The other labs, there's some other, like CompTIA labs, which are the previous versions of these that are for the 1000 series, and they just don't have a Core 1 version for that. That's why I've not mentioned it, because it doesn't exist. See how easy that was to have those? Those Core 1 labs are a real nice addition. Those 3D Core 1 labs where you have your own lab set up. It gets around the problem a lot of us have at being able to touch hardware. We don't have an extra piece of hardware. We don't know where to get any hardware. Even if we had it, we didn't know what we would be looking at. Well, how about a virtualized environment where all you have to do is use your mouse to move around and click things? Okay. And it looks just like a real lab setup. That's the new labs from CompTIA. And pretty impressive to be able to have those there. That's it's I think a great improvement over what they used to do. Now, one of the things that I have been working with in my series of tasks is to create more videos. So one of the things you'll notice if you do go to my website, on the home page is a link now to the 1001 videos. So if you're studying for the 1001, the training course is filling out very nicely. We've got online 18 videos, over 3 hours of content. You can see those new videos are there. Again, the structure very similar to the 1001, but obviously the content has been greatly updated. So make sure you use the correct links on the website to go to the video series that you're studying for, which at this point I think is probably almost everybody's taken the 1000 series at this point. I think it's a pretty good way to look at what you want to be able to do. Later on, probably in about 2 months, we'll revisit this and see how's the market look. Are there books available on Amazon? Are there other labs available out there? Are there practice exams available out there? We're all building this stuff right now. So that's what I would recommend. If you're ever in a case where you're planning to have all of these, it would be nice to have study materials that matched. So that's why I mentioned that, and being able to work with it. Of course, CompTIA has practice exams. They have labs. CompTIA even has a CompTIA Learn, which is sort of an online system that replaces a book. It replaces videos. It replaces practice exams. Like, it's an all-in-one sort of scenario. I guess what it really doesn't have are the 3D labs. But they've got a lot of options there for things. So I like to support what they're doing with that, but I also want to make sure that my free videos and other materials are always on my site and available for you no matter what. That's the main part. So if you go to YouTube, all the new videos are added there. On my website, the index is always available. It makes sense. With the future content, for those of you that have seen my success bundles that include course notes, practice exams, CD or DVD, or what used to be DVD, now flash drives. Sorry about that. The flash drive, all of these are available now for the 1000 series. And as soon as the 1100 series is done, we will have the success bundles available for the 1100 series too. So absolutely, those will be new courses available when the 1100 series is complete. It just takes time to get all of this done. Another question in the chat room from George. How many subnetting questions are there on the Network Plus exam? And to George's point, the whole subnetting, identifying how many hosts, these questions are killing me. And indeed, subnetting can be a challenge to learn. It's a lot to figure out. There's math involved. There's a lot of challenges with learning subnetting. And as most people will attest, subnetting is one of these things that seems like it's an impossible task until suddenly something clicks in the process and you get it. The problem is that the clicking part might take a day or it might take 3 months. Everybody's a little bit different in how long it finally takes to get some practice in to be able to subnet. On the Network Plus exam, the section on subnetting is a small section that's a small objective that's in a small section that's part of a much larger domain that is part of multiple domains on the exam. So it's one of these scenarios where you might get one subnetting question on your exam. You might get 2. I would think it would be unusual to get 3. And in some cases, you might get none. You might get no subnetting questions on your exam. So I tell people who are really struggling with the internals of subnetting, you've sat there for a week, It's not clicking for you. It doesn't help. You're frustrated. You're spinning your wheels. You're wrapped around the axle. It's just not a good situation. If that's your situation, don't just pass through it. Just don't even worry about it. You would be better off studying other things that have just as much chance, if not more of a chance, to show up on your exam. So spending all your time studying one topic doesn't make sense. And if it's something that you just know you're not going to get, this is not for you, we'll circle back to this when we take a Cisco exam. Just ignore it and keep moving. Now, I realize from the perspective of somebody trying to prepare you for an exam, that seems like awful advice. That seems like horrible advice. Yeah, just ignore that. Oh, you're having problems with it? Just ignore that. But we only have so much time in the day. This is a time motion study we're doing. So we're sitting down to study. We have a certain amount of time. When that time is up, that's it. That's all the time we get. So how do we maximize our time? Well, if we're spending all our time on a topic which has only a small percentage of showing up on your exam, and we could probably spend that time learning other things that could just as easily show up on the exam, I think that's a good swap of your time. So it's one of those situations where we may not know 100% of the exam objectives, but you know 99%. And if you know 99% of the exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam. That's not even a problem. So that's why I tell people, if subnetting is a thing for you, okay, you could skip that. I'll give you a pass on that one. But that's it. That's the only thing I'll give you a pass on. Everything else you should get. Everything else is relatively simple. There's no math anywhere else. So that's why I tell you that's where you should focus your efforts. The exam objectives are the beginning and ending of your studies. So make sure you have everything listed in those exam objectives. Make sure you know them all. Make sure you've studied them all. Okay, if you miss one of them, you're okay. But 99% is pretty good. And that's why I mention that to pretty much everyone. That's my philosophy. Study the things you know you can pass with. Fill yourself up with as much ammunition as possible. Because when you sit down for the exam, you got to make sure you're ready to go. And that's the important part. What if you spent 2 weeks studying subnetting, still didn't get it? Well, it was 2 weeks of time you could have been studying something else that would actually help you on your exam. So I think most everybody agrees with that concept. It's just weird to tell people, nah, don't study it. Now, if you plan on taking a Cisco exam, yeah, you're going to need to know subnetting. You are going, every question is all, it just seems this way on the exam. It's not the case, but it seems like every question you get has a subnetting component. And so for that, you really do have to be able to subnet very, 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 very quickly. That's where I got my 7 second subnetting system from. I kind of borrowed techniques from other systems, shortcuts I'd done in the past. And I wanted to have a way to do subnetting that had zero math associated with it. And I came very, very close. The 7 second subnetting, you have to know how to add one and subtract one. That's all the math you have to know. No other math. And that's the way you do it. You don't have to know binary. You don't have to do conversions. You just have to add one or subtract one. And that's why I created that format, because I have a problem with math during exams. And I want to make sure that I can get it done as quickly as possible. And that's where that version came from. So if you ever look at my videos for Network Plus, there's a couple of different shortcuts I use. One is the 7 second subnetting. The other is the magic number subnetting method. In reality, they're sort of the same thing. All of these methods, all of these shortcuts for subnetting are all sort of the same thing. You can't get away from the math. The math is the same every time you do it. The shortcut is effectively the same process for everybody's shortcut. It's just the magic number method requires that you do some subtraction of larger numbers. And I can't trust myself on an exam to count properly. I can count, just not in an order that anyone has ever seen before. So I always tell people, if you're having a problem with math that's not your thing, the 7 second subnetting works fine. If you're looking for the format that they have in the Cisco books and the format that a lot of people like to use on the Cisco side, it's the magic number method. I got a video for that too. And both of them are relatively easy. As I mentioned, they're almost identical because it's sort of hard to come up with another way to subnet. Ultimately, subnetting is all one thing. So that's why I mentioned that. Caleb in the chat room with the $5 super chat and a very nice logo, Caleb, by the way. Caleb says, thank you much for all the help and sense of community over the last year. Passed my A+ a few weeks ago. I have been interviewing for jobs already. Congratulations on your A+. Thank you for the $5 super chat. And congratulations on getting the interviews already. I think it sort of speaks to what people want to know when they're taking this A+. Is it worth it? Am I spending all of this time? Am I ever going to get a return on this investment? The goal is to get a job or get a better job. That's the only thing that drives us when we create these training materials. So the fact that you're able to get the cert and immediately you're now interviewing for jobs, that's a valuable certification right there. For no other reason, that's a valuable certification, Caleb. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. We do appreciate it. Joseph in the chat room. Joseph, we go way back. $10 super chat. Thank you so much for that. Joseph says, you've been a valuable resource for IT professionals. I hope you continue to be able to put out your wonderful content. Do you know something I don't, Joseph? What's happening? What's going to happen? I hope I continue to be able to do it as well. Thank you for the $10 super chat. That's very kind. It is very much appreciated. Goes right into keeping the crazy experiment going here that has escaped my lab. And we do plan on continuing to put out content. We have, I don't want to go too deep into what we think about for future, but we've already got plans for the next X number of years to be able to do things with this. We've already got things lined up. We've already got kind of a rough idea of what we want this to look like. Well, that's what we're doing. We're just going to make more. If you keep watching, people are watching the videos, they're giving good feedback, they think this can help us, I'm going to keep making videos. So we appreciate it. And we're able to do that thanks to your support. Thank you to the people that get the course notes and the practice exams and the labs and all the other things. And the fact you're just watching the videos. You don't have to buy anything. If you're just watching the videos, you go out to YouTube, you watch the video, that supports us as well. So all of that, we do appreciate. And thank you, Joseph, for also the $10 super chat and your continued support because you've been here for years as well. So thank you so much for having that. When I start breaking down some of these, especially for working through, the folks are asking about the 7 second subnetting. It is on the Network Plus video series. If you, let me see if I can find my video networking series on the website. It's under the N10008 is the one you should be using for the latest Network Plus videos. The 007 retires in June. But in the 008 video series, there is information here. I do have a video on binary math because I think it's helpful if you're planning to learn how to subnet. And I talk about classful subnetting and IPv4 subnet masks and how to manually calculate IPv4 subnets and hosts using binary so you understand before you do a shortcut, what are you shortcutting? How does this process work down at the binary level? And I explain that. And then right after that is the magic number subnetting and the 7 second subnetting. So you've got two choices there to learn how to subnet. This is in my N10008 Network Plus course. It's on my website. It's on the N10008 pull-down menu. Just click the link for the free N10008 Network Plus videos. That's where the 7 second subnetting and magic number subnetting options are. Subnetting is just cutting a cake. It's just cutting a pie into most of the time equal pieces. Sometimes subnetting is not cutting into equal pieces. Fortunately, you don't have to know anything about that right now. You just have to be able to do that. And Fortune, thank you in the website. Thank you in the chat room for mentioning the congratulations on the 600,000. That is referring specifically to the number of subscribers on my YouTube channel. I can't even believe that. We are at, that's the number. Yeah, it's the 601,000 subscribers, which is I don't even understand that. It's just mind-boggling to me. Cannot thank everyone enough for their continued support with this. It's just been fantastic. Thank you so much, and thank you for mentioning Fortune and the 600,000. It's been a great 600,000. Let's see what happens when we get another 600,000. We're just going to keep the party going. Why not? CJ in the chat room. CJ is going for my Security Plus soon. Wanted to say appreciate what you're doing so much. You're very welcome. The Security Plus course is a big one. So I'm glad all those videos are available. They are comprehensive because they're just huge. There's a lot to have there. C. Gomez Jr. in the chat room. I've taken other practice exams and fail. I take yours and pass over 90%. It was pretty, I think you meant pretty well-known learning site, yet the question seems so bad. Yeah. For some reason, there are people making practice exams for these CompTIA exams that are pulling objectives that are not covered on the CompTIA list of exam objectives. They just put topics in their practice exams that just come out of left field for some reason. I don't know why they do that. In many cases, they have questions they created for a previous version of the exams. They keep all of the previous version questions and add new questions to it for the updated objectives, and they put it all together and say it's for the new version, which is not true. It's for an old version. They're giving you outdated content with a little bit of new content, but because it looks so big, look, there's 500 questions here. Actually, there's 200, but there's a lot of old stuff in there. They just kept in there. I don't know why they're keeping it in there. And if you try to ask them why they have the old content in there, they give you some story that, oh, it's good to have perspective on the rest of what's happening. And no, it isn't. This is a certification exam. You don't need perspective on a certification exam. When I get the job and I'm in the role and I'm doing the engineering and I'm doing the planning and I'm doing the change control and I'm doing all those things, I'll get some objective perspective. I don't need practice exams to have that. Practice exams should be an exam that helps me practice. So I go with that. All of my practice exams are specifically written, and as you've seen at the end of the question, point directly to the exam objective where that question came from. I think that's probably the most unique aspect of my practice exams, is that they're actually written for the exam you're taking. I don't know why others do that, but they do. It's frustrating and irritating. But I'm happy with that because I feel like I've got practice exams that could effectively replace those and be better for this. Other questions. Are you thinking about adding, and I'm just going to put a fill in the blank, video series? And do I think it's worth studying for? This specifically is Teresa talking about CySA Plus, which is a higher level security certification that CompTIA offers. The CompTIA CySA Plus is a pretty popular certification, but I don't currently have plans to create a video series for that. I've been considering other types of training materials for CySA Plus, but right now it's just not on the list. It hasn't quite made the cut yet for what we need to have a viable course come from what we do. So right now, no, CySA Plus probably not on our list. I'll never say never, except with certain certifications that I will never do. But that's one that right now doesn't look like I'll be creating a CySA Plus. Something dramatic would have to happen with CySA Plus that it becomes like this monster cert that everybody must have. It's just not there right now. But CySA Plus is a great niche cert. And for you, the part of your question you asked, which is, do you think it's worth studying for this? Well, is there a job that is being asked of you? Is there a job posting you're working on where the CySA Plus is asked by this by the person you're hiring or doing the hiring. If they have that as a requirement on the job posting, well, yeah, it's very much worth studying for. Now, if you go to a bunch of job postings and none of them ever mention CySA Plus, well, that's probably when you don't have to worry too much about it, at least not at the moment. But it's a balancing act. It sort of depends on where you are in your, in this particular case, IT security career. If you already have an entry-level position in IT security and you want to move up, or you have all the things you think you need for IT security and you just want to hammer home that, yes, you are a good fit for this security role, CySA Plus is a great fit for that. So I think there's value in having the CySA Plus, but it's very specific as to what your ultimate goal is. We don't take these certifications because the certifications are there. You often hear people say, why did you climb that mountain? Well, because it's there. But for security certifications, for IT certifications, we take an IT certification because it's a means to an end. It's something we can use to reach a particular goal. The certification isn't the goal. It's what the certification allows us to get is the goal. So you have to very carefully look at all of the different objectives that are out there, things you're trying to work towards, jobs that may be available, positions you think you're qualified for, and see what they're asking for. Do they want you to have a certification? Do they want you to have a CompTIA certification, a Microsoft certification, a Cisco certification, an Apple certification, an Amazon certification? They get asked for a lot of things. What are they asking for? Okay, they're asking for this, this, and this. All right, I'm going to work on those 3 certifications. That's how you should be approaching this. Unfortunately, I do have people come to my website and they say, I've just passed my Security Plus. And I ask, great, what are you doing with that? And they go, I have no idea. How you've gone through the whole process of earning a Security Plus, which is a tough cert to get. That's a very hard certification, but you're taking it because there is no because. They don't have a because. They thought the certification was what you do. And then, I don't know, magic things happen after that. The question mark is after that one. Study for the cert, earn the certification. Huh? No, it needs to be look at job postings, see that 70% of the job postings want Security Plus, earn the Security Plus, get the job. That's what the process you should be going through. So the process of looking through job postings, I mentioned this in the video that I have on how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's linked in this YouTube video description. That video talks about this process of creating a spreadsheet, looking at all the jobs in your area that you feel you're qualified for, filling in all of the things that employer is looking for, making a note of certifications that they would like you to have, and then looking at the next jobs and getting every possible job in your area in the spreadsheet so that you can then kind of back up a little bit and look overall at what employers in your area would like you to have. Now, if you're near Washington, D.C., I would bet a majority of those job postings want Security Plus. If you are in Chicago, it probably is a much smaller percentage. If you're in Orlando, it's a completely different set of objectives. So it's very geographical for many reasons, but you need to look to see why or ask yourself, why am I getting this cert? What is it at the end of this that it's going to allow me to do? Now, sometimes, and I've done this, you get a certification because it's a topic you like. Maybe you want to get a Linux Plus certification because you just love working with Linux. I think that's completely reasonable. And it's a great way to earn a cert and learn something at the same time. And when you're doing that, you may not have a job posting out there that you're working towards. You're not earning the certification because you're going to be putting in a job posting somewhere. You're earning the certification because you want to learn more about Linux. That's obviously perfectly reasonable to do. But for the purposes of people coming to my website, the reason you're on this live stream, the reason that we go through this Q&A and we do everything that we do is because most people are trying to get a job or trying to get a better job. So a lot of what we're focused on is giving you the tools and the knowledge to be able to do that. So I think that's the way to do it. Can you direct me to the 220, 1001, 1002 exam objectives on your page or CompTIA's? I can. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. follow the link there to the CompTIA website, or from the Google machine, type in CompTIA Exam Objectives. It will take you right to the page. Take you right there to be able to find that. Let me quickly, hold on just a moment. We're going to, that's not the right lower third. This is, one moment, please. I think learning more about Linux is a great idea. I think it is a incredibly useful operating system. I sometimes will joke, if you're ever in the chat room with me, and I go, well, Linux is great, it just doesn't work. And that's really just to make the Linux people angry. But what the reality is, of course, behind the scenes, if you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, you're on a Linux server. If you're communicating to me, you're on that website, you're also going through a load balancer, also Linux-based. You're going through a DNS to get there, Linux-based. So tons of what I do on it accesses a database server that runs on Linux. So the bulk of my website is all Linux. So I'm a big fan of the Linux. Not sure if I'm a big fan of the Linux certifications. I like Linux Plus. I like the Red Hat. The others are not quite as straightforward for that. So I think those are two that you would probably look at and think those are pretty good. I think if you're planning to do anything in the cloud, if you're planning to work really anywhere, Linux is really, really useful because every organization in the world has some bit of Linux. It's hard. It'd be very, very, very difficult to find an organization where they don't have some Linux in there. Almost everybody has some. In some cases, most organizations have a lot of Linux. There's a separate Linux team, and just like there's a separate Microsoft team, because you need professionals that know details about the operating system in order to be able to support it well. Absolutely the case. Sly, what if you live in Los Angeles? Which certifications apply to you? You have to go to your favorite job posting website, go to Indeed, go to LinkedIn Jobs, go to dice.com, go to whatever your favorite site happens to be, filter on Los Angeles, and now look at all the jobs in that area that you think you apply towards, that you think you have the qualifications to earn that position, and see what they're asking for. So you have to do that wherever you happen to live in the world. That's the process you have to go through. In some ways, it's a little bit easier these days because we still have a good percentage of folks that are working from home. A lot of organizations have realized, hey, we could have all of our networking infrastructure managed by folks who are not in the office. Because all they do is they walk in the office anyway, they sit at their desk, and they're at their desk all day managing switches over SSH. Well, I could manage switches over SSH at home. So companies have realized, well, yeah, we could probably put somebody else in that seat who needs to be in the office using those resources and save some money and have this person work from home. As long as they're able to manage those switches and routers via SSH, they don't have to be in the office. Now, I realize that's not that way everywhere. It's a little bit controversial right now because some organizations have said, okay, it's time for everybody to come back to the office because, of course, we're just a big family and we all need to see each other's faces. There's actually good reasons why you will need everybody in the same room, especially if you're a company that's trying to build new products, you're a startup, you're a company that likes to innovate, and having everybody right there where you can just lean over and go, hey, what do you think about this? Or you got to talk to support, you walk around the corner and you talk to the folks in support. I used to work for a startup like this, and the CEO effectively mandated that if you are part of the corporate team, you must be in the corporate office. He did not want to have people working from home. He did not want to have people working in another building, much less at home. His philosophy was, let's get everybody in the same room because it's easier to collaborate if everybody's in the same room. And they weren't wrong. That's absolutely the case. And it became very, very useful during that startup phase. When there was a technical issue, I could grab a developer and a tech support person and me and sit on the same desk and go, what do you think? What should we do? What's the best way to mitigate this problem? Is there a long-term fix we can work on? What is it we should work? And we just sit around in 5 minutes, we solve the problem, back to where you started. You know, that is very, very difficult to do when you're working from home. You don't even know who to talk to when you're working from home. Now, I also mentioned this as someone who worked as a systems engineer for 20 years in this industry, and I would travel constantly. I did not have a desk in a building because I didn't work from a desk. I worked at the customer site. I would go visit people, usually at least 3 or 4 companies a day. So I'd go see people in the morning. We go to lunch with a group. We go see people in the afternoon. So I'd see these different companies throughout the day. And then the next day we would just repeat it, sometimes in a different city or a different state. So those were jobs where I couldn't be at an office because my job literally was at someone else's office. That's the way that particular role worked. Mostly I was traveling. So I would just go from one hotel to the other throughout the week, going from customer to customer to customer to customer. But for everybody back at corporate, if I ever flew back to corporate, and I often would fly back and just have meetings there or training sessions, but I would go back to corporate and everybody's there. You get to meet everybody. You know who's in marketing. You know who's in tech support. You can meet those people so that when you call support and say, hey, I'm on site with a customer and we're having this issue. Oh, it's Ben. Hey, Ben, how you doing? Good to see you. It's James. And we just have a conversation because I met Ben a week ago. I met Ben last month. We know each other now. That's what being in person does for you. So there's advantages and disadvantages. And I think that's one of those that are important to consider. Here's an interesting question. This one is just it's kind of a brain bender. But the question from It Must Be Me is, how will quantum computing change our roles in IT? I don't know, brother. That is a good question. It's a broad question. It's one that there's no answer to, obviously, because we don't know how it's going to change IT. But quantum computing itself is mind-blowing. Quantum computing is ridiculous and doesn't seem like it should work, and yet it does. The biggest problem I have with quantum computing is the people using quantum computing don't know how it works. They just know that it does. They've tested it enough to know it works, but behind the scenes, they have a fundamental understanding of what's happening, but they really can't tell you exactly what's happening. And if you ask someone who is schooled in quantum computing, who has been trained in quantum computing and does intensive studies with quantum computing and has years of experience with this, they will tell you, yeah, we don't know how this works. We just know that it does. So obviously, the one thing that you will see in IT that deals with quantum computing, and the thing that really sort of breaks all of this apart, is with quantum computing, you can do these calculations with cryptography that normally would be so insurmountable and so time-consuming that it would take more than the predicted age of the universe to be able to calculate. Quantum computing does it very quickly. So instead of it taking the age of the universe, it takes an hour. That's really not an overreach. I'm not overstating this. It greatly changes our ability to calculate very, very difficult problems and make them very, very, very simple in the way that we can get an answer. The process is complicated, but the way you get the answer is relatively simple. So it effectively, if that's the case, it breaks encryption. It breaks the way we do encryption. It breaks our asymmetric public key, private key to pieces. It makes it completely worthless. It doesn't protect anything with quantum computing. Fortunately, people who are smart with this stuff have now come up with ways to do encryption that cannot be easily broken with quantum computing techniques. So there is an upgrade process. There is a way to make quantum computing and cryptography still work nicely together and protect our data. And We'll have to see how this all works out. But quantum computing itself, if you were just to watch one single introductory video on quantum computing, it will mess your brain up for about a day, and then you'll realize nothing is real. And we are all just little ideas of energy living in a large universe. There's a whole bunch of, it just messes you up because quantum computing is remarkable in the way that it operates. Like it can't possibly do that. Absolutely does that. That kind of scenario. You're looking for the next big, massive change in technology. It's quantum computing. It's a technology that's been here for a long time. We've understood that this exists. We've been doing tests with quantum computing for a very long time, for tens of years. Probably not very long time, but there's quite a legacy of documentation we've created on quantum computing, and we're still learning about it, obviously. But it's one of those where we still have not quite figured it all out yet and how it will work. But it is definitely a huge change with what we do. And as soon as we start getting this tighter and easier to use and can implement it in a way that makes sense, it's going to be remarkable to see what happens. It's going to change the way that we use computers. It already has in many ways. We just don't really see it directly yet, but it's going to make quite a difference in there. So more there to talk about, more there than I will ever know. I am not a quantum computing expert. I don't even pretend to be, nor do I want to be. But I love listening to people who are knowledgeable about these technologies because they mess up my brain. I'm that kind of person. I love to watch the number file stuff on YouTube because they talk about numbers and how they are weird. Numbers are weird. Math is odd. And so they talk, especially prime numbers, and they go through a whole section of these. I love watching those, and quantum computing kind of has that same mystery to me, and the same weirdness. Like what does what? How does it? No, there's no way it does that. Yeah, it totally does that. Very remarkable. Very remarkable. So if you're someone who is wanting to learn more about that, I think quantum computing overall is an interesting technology and certainly one you need to know for Security Plus. It's in the exam objectives. And I do have a video on quantum computing where I give a very brief overview, very high-level overview of quantum computing. But it is one that, as we do more with networking and do more with A+, I think some of that will leak into the exam objectives as the years go by because we're just going to see more and more and more of it. So you don't have to know much now, maybe later on, to go through that. Here's an interesting one. Hey, Professor, I'm visiting a data center very soon. How can I make the most of that visit? What should things to check out, things to understand? Always fun. One of the great joys of my previous job working as a systems engineer is visiting all these different companies, and they will give us tours of their data center. Oh, I'm glad you're here. Let's put in this firewall. While you're here, let me show you around. Here's the server core. Here's where we got some storage. Here's a network connection. There's the DMARC. Here's the and we get into all sorts of things. Every data center is a little bit different. I love doing data center tours. I love walking around data centers. I love seeing all the equipment, seeing what they're doing with it. It's a lot of fun. So if you're there, there's certain things that are very impressive of a data center. Overall, a data center is kind of boring. It's just racks, 19-inch racks in a row with equipment inside of them. You're thinking, what good is that? It's kind of boring. The fun part's kind of around the back because it's not about what the computing is going on right now. It's what happens when there's a problem. So if you're going on a data center tour, make sure you ask them about battery backup and generator backup, because maybe they'll show you the generators. And I used to work with a lot of companies in South Florida. Obviously, hurricanes is an enormous problem there. And so the type of generators and power backups that people would have were ridiculous and remarkable. It's things you would never see anywhere else. And it's interesting to see in some of these data centers, especially data centers that are shared data centers with multiple companies. that have equipment there. There has to be a very strong infrastructure and a backup for all of these things. So that was one aspect of it. The other aspect I always thought was interesting was the security. Security in data centers varies widely. I have had some data centers where I have had to leave my phone outside. I had to provide my social security number and something else, maybe my ID. I had to leave my ID behind. For the people that are going to a data center with a social security number that for some reason we wrote down on a piece of paper with everybody else's social security number. This literally happened. And I asked them, I wrote my name down. I said, social security number, you're asking for social security numbers, and then I can see everybody else's on the list. They go, yep, that's our policy. Okay. Well, I'll put down my social security number then. 867-530-9999. Because I thought to myself, now how are they supposed to validate my social security number? They can't. So I just put down a number because I don't want anybody else getting my social security number. Not that it's that difficult, because it sort of isn't, but I don't want it to make it any easier. So I put my name, I put somebody's social security number down, and I put, everything else they asked for, and I left my phone and I left my ID. So that was, I can't imagine. I thought it was a test because I was going in as a cybersecurity engineer. I thought, are they testing me to see if I put down my social security number? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to write something else. And I now have a technique. This has happened enough to me that I have a technique where there's certain numbers I flip around so that I can remember the same one every time. I don't know why they did that. I think it's probably some dumb federal mandate that's written down in a law from 20 years ago, and they had to have that. Whatever. I think it was a federal government facility. I think there was DOD equipment. There's all kinds of stuff going on in there. The part that was the most painful, though, is leaving your phone behind because they don't want any pictures. So you have to leave your phone. And I was kind of itching the whole time, like, I got to get out of here. I need my phone. It's not going to work. But you run into those things all the time. So definitely, of course, look at anything dealing with power, anything dealing with backup. If you're in a data center, sometimes interesting to see very unique implementations. In some data centers, there's large storage arrays, or there's a very unique tape library with robots. You run into crazy things in data centers. Those are also things to look at. I would say probably outside of a data center, the best tours I ever got were tours of a manufacturing facility. So one of my customers was a beer manufacturer, literally. And so after doing the IT part, he would take me on the sort of the tour of the manufacturing facility. Here's where we make the beer. That's kind of fun. Another interesting place I visited, there's two other good ones. One was a company that makes luxury cars, was one of our customers. And we had to put on a smock, a white coat, when we went onto the facility that covered up the buttons and clasps and zippers that are on our shirts and pants. So it came down kind of halfway down the top part of your leg, so that the only thing that was really out and seen was the bottom part of your legs. Because if you happen to hit a new car as it's going down the assembly line and a rivet or button from your pants hits that car, it's going to leave a mark. We can't have that on the new car. So everybody had to wear the smock. Another good one was I had to put in some equipment in a nuclear power plant. Now, what I found interesting is going into the nuclear power plant, I had to go through a metal detector. Sort of being at the airport, I had to put everything on the metal detector. Everything had to go inside. I had to go through a magnetometer. All my equipment went through the other side of the metal detector and was x-rayed. And then I went through the door once we passed that, and there was a little window of someone, one-way mirror of somebody watching that metal detector process. It was a military person. It was someone, I think it was the Marines. It might have been Army. I think it was Marines. And he had a weapon that he had in his hands and had a rifle and would just sit there and watch the window of people coming through. And if he had to use the rifle, he would use it, which I thought was, you don't get that often when you're going into a meeting. Like, is anybody armed? Well, I live in the South, so most people were. But does anybody have a rifle with them that's capable of automatic operation? Well, that person did. So it's always interesting. You never know what you're going to run into with experiences like that. Take advantage of those tours. Take advantage of people who'd like to show you around. There's always something interesting you'll find. It always helps. And then you'll probably get a good story out of it. You'll never believe what I saw today. Is always interesting. Because I've had customers that were companies that provided network services over satellite. I've had customers that were theme parks. I've had customers that made beer, that made nuclear power, so you'll find a lot of very interesting and unique environments you'll run into. Interestingly enough, all their networks are very similar. You know, there were nuances between all of them. They all ran IP. They all had the same type of network flows. They all used the same type of protocols. The only place where it got a little unusual, really unusual, the most unusual networks I ran into were at NASA, because they have relatively unique requirements for protocols, for communication, for network types. I have a video on A+ where we talk about the internet connections. Well, you have LAN, WAN, MAN, and Mars. You know, NASA's a little bit different when it comes to how they set up their networks. So those were crazy. They made their own protocols. That's how deep they were into the networking side of things. And I, at the time, had a protocol analyzer, and they wanted to write their own decodes for the protocol analyzer so they could decode their own stuff, which we were able to provide. We had a software developers kit, and we were able to provide that to them. But that's because they just made up their own protocols. Who needs IP? We can't do IP. IP doesn't work to Mars. Turns out IP does work to Mars, but for what they were doing at the time, they had their own protocols they were working with. Other questions from graphic design. Do we have to demonstrate on a laptop or computer during the CompTIA A+ test? For most of the questions you'll get on your CompTIA exam, you'll have multiple choice questions. So there's not really an interactive part of it. However, the first handful of questions you get on the exam are performance-based questions. That's what CompTIA calls them. What that means is that they are anything but multiple choice. They might be a fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt and have you perform a function. They might put you at a Windows screen and say, partition this drive in a certain way. Create a RAID array inside of Windows. Drag and drop this. Make this configuration change. You have to do it in Windows. Or they might give you a scenario where there's one from my practice exams book is, here is a wireless access point and it needs to be configured with these security settings, go. And you have to know what to click in that access point to be able to add those security features. So there are some practical parts of that. Absolutely. And you could get asked some of those during the exam. Absolutely. You could have a question just like that you would have to be able, you don't have to, you're not going to be taking apart a computer, but it might ask you about the process when you're doing that. Am I going to make content on Linux Plus? Well, this sort of the fill in the blank of, am I going to make content on whatever this thing is, Linux, Amazon, Microsoft, Cisco, Linux Plus, whatever it is. I don't know. I have a list. Right now, I'm making A+ content. Right now, I'm working on the A+. That's what I'm working on. That's my life right now. As soon as that's done, as soon as I get everything finished, published, available to you, then I have to make a decision. And only then do I make that decision, because my idea of what I'm doing next changes all the time. So I always tell folks that if you're going to work on or think about what's happening next, I'm going to have to wait until it happens. Have to wait until I actually start on working with those things. Then we're good. But only then will I know. So I don't know. Could I make Linux Plus? I could. I just don't know what it's going to be next. I have an idea in my mind what it's going to be. Today, as I sit here, this is what we're going to do. It's not Linux Plus, but I have an idea. Now, the problem is I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll think, I said I was going to do this. Actually, I think I'm going to do this instead. Or I sit in front of Google Trends. You ever use Google Trends? It's amazing. And I've typed into Google, show me the trends of certain topics over time. And so I want to compare and contrast. It's hard to compare and contrast certifications. How many people are interested in Amazon, Microsoft, Cisco, Linux Plus, CompTIA? But it's hard to parse those out to a specific cert and get a valid understanding of what people are asking for. So I tell people all the time, I don't know what it's going to be. I think I know what it's going to be, but it's going to change 20 times or more before I finally get to the point of actually sitting down, creating a directory for it, and start filling in all of the training materials. Because I don't use someone else's training materials. I write everything myself. So I do that primarily because I know there's no copyright issue that way. I can create anything I want and make it exactly the way I like it. And so I have a particular style about that, so I have to wait. So I don't think it's going to be Linux Plus, but who knows? Months from now, it could be something completely different. So I wish I had a better answer for you on that one. I want to start with help desk. What would be the best career path to follow? Everybody has a different path in IT. IT is huge. IT is not one single monolithic thing. Like, where do you work? I work IT. No. What you mean, like operating systems or networking or data centers or middleware or cloud or databases or mail or internet or high speed or SAN or no, just IT. Now there's a path. There's all these little things. Everybody has a different way to get there. My path in IT was I started in college working in an operations role with mainframes. So I did sort of the night shift of effectively babysitting mainframes. I was help desk for the mainframe. So if the mainframe was working, I had very little I had to do. Put some tapes on the tape machine, pull printouts from the printer, and make them available to people who came by. But when things would break, it's my responsibility to call somebody who knew what the heck was going on, because at that point, it was not me. I didn't know anything about the mainframe. But they told me, here's what to look for on the screen. And if it looks like this on the screen, go get somebody to help you. And they would come in and they would fix the problem on the mainframe. That was my first IT job. It's my first technical job. And that was in college. Out of college, I started working as a field service engineer. So people would need a memory upgrade. They need a hard drive installation. They need a motherboard swapped out, a warranty repair. That was me. I would travel to that company. I'd have all the stuff with me, have my toolbox with me. I would fix whatever they're doing, and then I'd leave. So that was my job. I'd show up, fix it, walk out the door, and did that for a while. And then I started working for a corporation, a life insurance company, and I was in IT with the life insurance company at sort of the corporate help desk. And that's where I started learning more about desktop operating systems, optimizing Windows over the network, understanding the networking side of things, limitations, bandwidths, communications. And then it sort of built from there. So I kind of went from kind of a hardware operations field service to desktop operating systems, moved into kind of networking and network operating systems from there. That would be like Windows Server, at the time Novell, and Windows Server or LAN Manager. So then went from that to more of a pure networking role, especially with protocol analyzers. Started working with companies and manufacturers that had the protocol analyzers, understanding things at the protocol level, understanding what was happening on the network. And I was able to work there for quite some time and leverage that into a role in cybersecurity and work for a next generation firewall company. So my path was really sort of hardware, desktop, server, network, security. So it was kind of a long roundabout way to get to the security role but at the time when I started, I didn't know I would end up where I ended up. You never do. And in IT, things move really, really fast. When I started my role in IT, there was not an internet. I mean, there was, but humans like me, normal people like me and you weren't on it. It was just this research thing they were running. But suddenly the internet showed up and we had access to it. Okay, if you're in that position, let's see what we can do with this internet. And then, of course, everything took off. You had Yahoo, and we were doing things with search engines, and now everybody was on the internet, and that changed IT. It changed security. It changed networking. It changed IT in general. Kind of built, we're in cloud computing and quantum computing now. That type of concept did not exist when I started with this, and it's going to be the same thing for you. If you're just starting your path into IT, you may think you know how this is going to go. Well, I'll get a job on the help desk, then I'll start working with the network team, then we'll do this. Except somewhere in there, there will be some type of quantum change. There will be some type of shift in what happens with technology. And suddenly, whoa, that's interesting. Let's go learn more about that thing. And you become an expert in this new emerging field, and now everybody wants you to work in that field. A field that up to that point did not exist. And now suddenly you're in the middle of it. This is what happened with me and next generation firewalls. I'm a perfect example of this. I'm working in a company that deals with network management, protocol analysis, understanding the performance and availability of your network resources. And then I get a call from a friend of mine that says, I just interviewed and I'm taking a job at this company that makes next generation firewalls, whatever that is. Never heard of it. They say it can understand applications that are going over the network and firewall them. So they could allow you to read Twitter, but block posting to Twitter. I said, well, that doesn't exist. That's not even real. That's not a thing. Nobody does that. And he said, yeah, I know, but they do, and they have it, and they're going to sell it, and they're looking for somebody to hop in here who knows technology. And if go look at what they got, if you think that's legit, tell me, and then send me your resume. Actually, do the other thing. Send me your resume and then go look at it. And he stuck my resume into all of that. And so I ended up being one of the first SE teams for this next generation firewall product that nobody had ever seen before. That was a good example of a technology that came along that up to that point did not exist anywhere. And suddenly now you're the one using that technology, knowing more about it than other people in the world knew about that technology. I spent the first year of that job going from company to company to company, telling them, here's a next generation firewall and what they do. And every single person would say, well, they'd say it in a very crude way, but they'd say, no, it doesn't. That's bull. That's no way that does that. And I go, let's plug it in. And we'd plug it in, and it did it. And it effectively turned into these meetings where someone would say, there's no way. They go from, there's no way it does that, like the stages of grief. You had denial, acceptance. Now you go through the whole thing. You're fighting with each other. You're angry. You go through the whole setup. And at the end of it, you're plugging it in and showing them it does this. And it goes from, there's no way that technology exists, to how much of this and how many of them can I have? That's how amazing that technology was. And it did. It's one of those rare examples of a technology. And I got it. You've been here. I know you know what I'm talking about when I say it's a technology that does exactly what the company says it does. You know how rare that is to find these days? A technology that actually does what they say it does? It actually did it. It was solid. It was hardened. It ran relatively bug-free. It was a well-made technology and a well-made product. and it sold a lot of firewalls. It was a lot of fun to demonstrate and show this. And I got tons of stories I can't tell you about of things I found on people's networks because this technology saw so much. It saw more than anyone else had ever seen on a network. You plug it in and you know instantly the Active Directory name of the user who's browsing this thing that they shouldn't be browsing and what exactly the images were from what they were browsing. Do you know how remarkable that is? Instantly. Like you saw instantly, well, he likes that thing there. Oh, I see what site he's on. This person is working hard. That one is not. It was remarkable in being able to see this. And there were instances, as I've mentioned on other study groups, where we saw things that were literally illegal occurring on people's networks, and we had to get the proper authorities involved at resolving this. So that's when I would, if you're ever in a situation where you're wondering, you know, I'm on a help desk. My first job is at the help desk. Is this ever going to turn into anything? I can tell you unequivocally, oh yeah, it's going to turn into something. It's going to be remarkable. It's a crazy ride. You're going to see and do things you never thought you would do. But that's the beauty of IT. That's the beauty of you deciding what your path is going to be, following your interests, following the interests of other people. That's the key. That's the whole reason I do this, is I don't think that level of flexibility exists in any other vertical market in the world. I think IT is a game changer. I think it transcends a lot of problems that people have had with employment and work and jobs that they've ever had. It pays well. And it allows you to do things you want to do, which is a lot different than what other people are. And there's complete upward mobility. You can just keep going up and up and up and up and up. There is no top level. You just keep going. So that's the beauty of it. And I think that's why I get excited about these technologies. I get excited about A+ and Network Plus and Security Plus and other certifications, not only for the topics that are on these exams, because all of these topics are things you're going to run into eventually, but it's the potential that I see. People getting these certs, and now the whole world has opened up. I get emails all the time from people that they were in medicine. They were bartenders. They were truck drivers. They were doing some other job that had some kind of limitation. And they took the time and effort to move into IT, to take their first A+ certifications, to look for that first job. In some cases, they took a pay cut to get the first job, but they know the upward side of this is much larger than they would have ever had in their previous roles. That's the beauty of IT. I want everyone to be able to experience that who wants to do it. So that's why we do what we do. We make these videos so that you can get a job or get a better job. Bottom line. That's our mission statement. We want you to get a job or get a better job, period. Very remarkable. So I think that's a good place to kind of finish us for this particular study group, but we've got another study group in 2 days. If you're here Tuesday, come on back Thursday. We'd love to do some 220-1002 Core 2 A+ study group on Thursday. I've got all new questions that I've written. I've got all new content we're going to go through, new performance-based questions. It's all there. And we've got, of course, Network Plus and Security Plus later on in the month. Make sure you check our calendar for when the latest event is going to be at professormesser.com/calendar, or check the events calendar that's in our Discord server. Thanks for being here. Everyone in the chat room that has been here on the Q&A, thank you for your questions in the after show. We love doing these live streams. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for spending a little bit of your time and having some fun and just talking about technology. Come on back Thursday. We'd love to do another one of these with you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.